Ladies and gentlemen, the thrilling conclusion to any landing you can walk away from. Chapter 4. Jet looked up at the open sliding glass door before shifting off of his soaked, sweating daughter. His heart had frozen in mid-beat as he came to a terrible realization of the situation he was in. His daughter had just asked him where his ex, Delta V, currently was, a question he should have asked himself before he literally screwed their daughter so hard that they tumbled into the room Delta had been moments before. But the heady mix of hormones and medication had prevented him from thinking about anything but pounding Apogee's fillyhood. But there was no well-armed hoof flying to his face, no angry screaming Delta, no police sirens wailing in the distance. All Jet could see was an open sliding glass door. A light breeze from the cool Las Pegasus evening blew over his balcony and into his study. She's gone. Jet mumbled, still resting on his belly next to Apogee. What? Did she... You don't think... Did she see us? Apogee began to worry as she also rolled over onto her stomach, frantically bringing up one of her hooves to wipe the thick globs of her father's special cream from her brow and mane. No. Jet breathed out, still looking out at the evening sky. I don't think I'd still be breathing if she'd seen us. I think she just left without saying anything. Jet let out a little sigh before considering the strangeness of Delta's visit. Honestly, I'm surprised she's staying as long as she did. I would have thought she'd have left within 10 minutes so she could be half drunk in some dive bar by noon. Apogee frowned and rolled her eyes at her father's venom. She opened her mouth to scold him, only to stop because she felt a trickle of thick spunk sliding over her lips into her mouth, making her cough. Blech. Apogee looked down at herself, her fur covered in thick strands of juice as she continued trying to clean the heavy coat of dad paint she'd been covered in. Dad. A little bit overboard, don't you think? Apogee chuckled, inspecting herself. What? Jet smirked playfully across at his daughter. I didn't hear you complaining earlier. Apogee grumbled as she got back up to her hooves. There wasn't so much yesterday. Shit. It's in my hair. Do all stallions come this much? Apogee shook herself like a dog, flinging droplets of unspeakable fluids everywhere. Jet held up a wing to protect himself from the sticky drizzle of jet juice. He wanted to scold his daughter for making a mess, but he knew that the mess was actually his. He's definitely a record setter for me. I'm not aware of the output of other stallions. I think it's probably a bit more than average. Apogee blushed. Oh, I wouldn't know. Jet let out a little sigh of relief. He'd suspected as much, but it was reassuring to know that he was his daughter's first stallion. Well, no need to go rushing out to fact-check your dad or anything, hun. Jet chuckled nervously. Apogee looked at her nervous father with a smirk before sliding over to glomp him with a slimy hug. She nuzzled into him even as he flinched away from her cum-soaked mess of fur and hair. Oh, don't worry, Dad. I've got everything I need right here. Resigning himself to being plastered in the gunk covering Apogee, Jet returned his daughter's affectionate nuzzle, with a resigned sigh as he tried to get back up on his hooves. Ouch. But then he grunted in pain suddenly, feeling a sharp knot of tension blossom in his back. It must have been when he and Apogee had taken their tumble off the high library table in a flurry of limbs and splinters. He tried to protect his daughter from the impact of the fall, and with the awkward embrace and tumble he'd managed to strain some of the delicate wing muscles in his upper back, the sharp pain strongly ignoring him to stray prone on the ground, and not try to get back up. Dad, what's wrong? Apogee asked with concern, quickly bracing his weight. My back, my wings. I think I threw it out on the fall down. Apogee quickly ran one of her hooves over her father's back, flinching in symphony as she shivered under her touch. But Dad, you're so energetic right afterward. Just running on adrenaline, I guess. Jet chuckled, still wincing. Even the movement of his barrel as he drew breath and laughed was causing discomfort now. Stay right there, Dad. Don't move. I'll make you feel better. Apogee released her embrace on her father, rushing off into the other room before Jet could say a word. This was her dad. No, this was her stallion too. She would take care of him. Wait, it's not... Jet reached after his daughter, but only managed to turn his head part way before the pain radiated through him, all from the source of the little knot between his wing muscles. He only managed to just catch sight of her retreating tail, the soaked blue-green hairs of her undone tailbone whisking over a small trail of his own semen, part of the recent deposit he'd left dripping from his daughter's fillyhood. Clenching his eyes with pain, Jet spent the next few minutes in silence listening to Apogee scuttle around the condo, sometimes quickly returning from the study and then leaving again in an instant. His attempts to ask what she was doing were rebuffed with quick grunts and responses. Just a minute. Even when he heard what sounded like a hoof smashing through wood behind him, Apogee would merely hiss back at him to be quiet and relax. Jet had little choice but to obey, with the pain of his spasming back keeping him on his stomach. It wasn't until he felt a warm towel on his back and a reassuring rub of Apogee's hoof that his back muscles finally began to loosen. Here, Dad. Take a couple of these aspirins. It should help you start to unwind. Apogee put a couple of white pills in his hoof and set down a cup of water, and Jet smiled lovingly at his little nurse, noticing that she'd also taken the opportunity to quickly clean herself up and no longer looked like a cum-soaked, sticky brothel pony while rushing about and doing whatever it was that she'd been doing. Thanks, son. Jet popped the aspirin in his mouth and took a sip of water. Drink all of it. Apogee scolded, tipping the glass in Jet's grasp and forcing him to take larger swallows. Otherwise, you'll get a tummy ache. Jet quickly finished the rest of the glass under Apogee's watchful eye before drawing in a breath and chuckling. Well now, aren't you just the bossiest, cutest little nurse? Apogee smirked, covering her mouth with a hoof to hide the pleasure before replying. That's right. I am your nurse right now, Dad, and this nurse is ordering you to follow her commands. Apogee slipped her shoulder under her father's foreleg, bracing him as she lifted him to his hooves. Thanks, hon. And then those aspirins are starting to kick in. Jet groaned as he carefully let his daughter turn him about slowly, walking him back into the library. What's that? Jet looked into the next room, seeing that the library table had been put back together by his daughter. The legs quickly reassembled from the earlier collapse. It had a new dinner plate-sized hole near its center, right where it had been first kicked through when they tumbled off. Apogee must have widened it. Okay, here we go, Dad. 1, 2, 3, and hup! Apogee helped lift her father up onto the table. Now stretch out as much as you can on the tabletop, and I can give you a nice back massage. Apogee ordered, helping her father to wiggle about on the table and straighten out his limbs. She positioned her hooves over her father's back, ready to give him a relaxing rub. It was funny. It reminded her of the last time she'd done this. The 10-year-old Apogee had bounced happily from the sofa as she heard the front door of the apartment open up. Dad was home. Her father had quickly wrapped her in a big hug and given her a little kiss on the cheek. As she happily tousled her hair, she noticed him wincing. What's the matter, Daddy? Did you hurt yourself? Younger Apogee asked. Yeah, hon. Don't worry. It's just a little bruise. A wing strut fastening belt fell off the scaffold and landed on my back earlier today. Jet groaned as he slumped onto the couch, sighing. Apogee had quickly sprung up on the couch behind him. She knew how she could help her father out. Here, Dad, let me give you one of my equestrian famous back rubs. She'd bitten her tongue between her teeth as she carefully focused on her poor father's back, working her hooves softly, if somewhat clumsily, down his neck to the swollen area in his back. Jet winced as his daughter's hooves reached the painful bump that he'd received earlier that day. She was a little too forceful, a little too unskilled, but the fact that she was giving him a back rub out of pure daughterly love more than made up for it. Thanks, son. Jet grimaced, not wanting to discourage his daughter's affection. Heck, he could use at least one pony who cared about him unconditionally. Love you, Daddy. Apogee pressed her little head against her father's back. Love you too, sweetie. Apogee was biting her tongue, trying to focus again, as she ran her teenage hooves over her father's back, still sticky from dried sweat. She carefully kneaded his spasming muscles between his ribs and spine, and she cooed softly into his ears. Shh, Dad, just relax, deep breaths. Apogee softly caressed his lower back with loving and reassuring strokes. Yeah, there you go, Dad. Let your muscles unwind. Apogee felt Jet finally beginning to unclench under her hooves as she prepared to put the second part of her plan in motion. Jet sighed with relief. He was melting into the wood of the table now, and the aching pain bleeding out of him as he moaned out softly from his daughter's ministrations. How had she gotten so good at giving back rubs over the years? Her hooves carefully worked out knot after knot as they traced circles lower and lower down his back. Then they went over his flank, and Jet stiffened slightly. If this was happening a few days earlier, before everything that had happened, he would have scolded his daughter for making such inappropriate contact. But after everything they'd just been through, all the debauchery of the past day and a half, well, he wasn't going to say anything. But he was still getting used to the new intimacy Apogee enjoyed with his body. And she was enjoying it. Apogee loved the feel of her father's flanks under her hooves. She loved feeling his powerful, sinewy muscles flexing and tightening. She grinned when she saw him flinch slightly and tuck his tail down as she recoiled from their exploring touch. Planning a quick slap to the outside of his buttocks, she scolded him for being shy. "Come on, Dad, just relax." Apogee cooed as she let her hoof slide down the crack where both her father's cheeks met, pushing underneath his short tail and playfully lifting his dock ever so slightly. Apogee," Jed moaned as his daughter used one hoof to lift his tail out of the way as she reassuringly stroked his butt with the other. Apogee smiled as she saw her father shifting his hips uncomfortably. He's probably popping a boner. Apogee grinned internally as she realized her massage was having the effect she'd hoped for. "Shift your tummy up, Dad. Nurse's order." Apogee pressed both her hooves against her father's bottom, one of them pressing right against the delicate skin between his dock and tail hole, helping Jet to slide upwards. As per her plan, Jet's equipment aligned with the rather large hole that Apogee had kicked into the tabletop earlier, allowing his genitals, which had previously been trapped between her lower belly and the table, to freely hang below with much more comfort. Apogee ducked her head onto the tabletop to see the result of the work for herself. She wasn't disappointed. Her eyes were awed by the sight of her father's heavy, semi-soft penis and large testicular orbs all hanging weightily from his groin, swinging freely under the table. "Apogee, did you kick a glory hole into the library table?" Jed asked, twisting his head to look back at his daughter. "Not really. You'd already put the hole there when we fell into the table. I just made it dad-sized." Apogee blushed brighter as her father grinned at her, clearly proud of himself. Apogee frowned. As the nurse in charge, she couldn't have any more of that. She knew from her own interpretation of Delta's stories earlier that she had to take the reins of control in this tryst if she really wanted to excite her beloved father. She had to resist getting swept up into this rhythm again. Apogee brought her hoof swiftly against his left flank, spanking him with a sharp, audible slap. "Now that's enough of that. No more talking, Dad. Just scoot up and get comfortable, and let me take care of you." Jet's smile faltered ever so slightly. This was the first time that Apogee had taken the lead so decisively. At first, he was a little shocked. His beloved little daughter, bossing him around, and not in her usual begging or manipulative way, but the forceful determination. Jet had to swallow deeply. It was so wrong, but also kind of exciting. Apogee grinned as her father meekly put his head back down, submitting to her command. "Celestia, do I want to spank Dad's butt again?" Apogee thought, drooling slightly as she looked at her father's rear. "But he did just behave. I guess I should be nice." Apogee brought her hooves down to Jet's ankles, tenderly rubbing the sore and stiff joints of a CEO constantly on his hooves, built up from long days where he would work his way through the massive production and assembly lines to meet with his engineers in person. She smiled to herself as she heard her father groan in delight. She brought her hooves carefully up his leg, working her way past his knee, making warm circles as she kneaded her soft frogs against his fur. With growing confidence, Apogee brought her hooves on the original target, her father's inner thighs drawing closer and closer, and she could feel Jet stiffen with nervousness as she began to explore this very private region of his. Apogee marveled to herself at how thin and soft the fur was here. It was really allowed her to feel just how tender and soft her dad's skin was under his rough exterior. She was losing herself in the process. the intimate act of massage, each circle bringing her closer and closer to his plot. As her father shifted slightly to give her better access to his nethers. Brushing his tail out of the way softly, Apogee looked lovingly at her father's backside, his small tail hole perched just above the beginning of the slick brown skin of his scrotum, which ran down to the smooth sheet of his heavy hanging balls underneath the table. Apogee playfully blew a breath of hot air across her father's bottom, making him twitch and clench in anticipation. Apogee tittered slightly before continuing to massage his flanks, playfully gripping, as she rubbed outwards, effectively spreading his ass cheeks and leaving him vulnerably bare to her attention. Hun, careful down there. Apogee blew a hot stream of air directly onto her father's exposed rosebud, causing him to almost squeak. Hush, Dad. Nurse, Apogee is taking care of you now, and I won't let anything bad happen to your butt, even if it is as sensitive as a little filly's. She chuckled, drilling lightly over the side of her father's rear. Jet laughed back at her, doing his best to tease back. Hey, I'll have you know that I possess a rugged stallion's ass, young lady. Jet wiggled his flank despite knowing that he was bearing all of his little girl. Apogee couldn't help but chuckle at his father's antics. Oh, really? Apogee leaned into her father's spread rear. 'Cause I would have described it as being just like a filly's cute. Apogee leaned in, planting a light kiss an inch beneath her father's asshole in the warm, smooth scrotum. Little... She planted another kiss, slightly higher on his twitching perineum. Hot. And Jet shivered as he felt the light kiss on his daughter's soft lips against his pucker. Ass. And with that last sultry word, Apogee sloppily kissed her father's butt, making him jump. And Apogee quickly pulled back, chuckling. Gotcha, Dad. Jet grumbled with dismay, before he was soothed by the feel of Apogee's hooves tracing over his back as she slid up the side of the table. Now what do we have down here? Nurse Apogee wondered, wiggling her eyebrows at her captive father. Apogee wanted to maintain the aura of being in charge. She'd picked up on the hints her mother had unintentionally shared with her about her father's proclivities and the stories of the earlier days of their romance. And without missing a beat, the little filly cleverly slid under the table. The flat underside of the wood tabletop was only broken by the sizable hole she had enlarged earlier, and the fleshy appendage that was poking through them. Apogee held a hoof in her mouth in wonder. It was different when this monster was the only thing that she could see, kept separate from the remainder of her beloved father's body by the occluding layer of the table. It was overwhelming, the sheer thickness, the heavy hanging fruits, the dripping tip. It didn't even matter that it was not fully erect yet. It was stunning for Apogee to take in. Apogee paused briefly after ducking under the table. She considered the heavy appendage dropping in front of her, slowly filling with blood, and she realized that aside from his throbbing biological desire, she was actually a bit neutral towards this thing. It was really the fact that it was attached to her dad that made her love it. Apogee chuckled to herself as she reached for the thick stallion hood, as a memory returned to mind. Dad, look, Dad, real cows! The 9-year-old Apogee ran ahead of her father. The pair had been flying from Las Pegasus to Canalot together, but Apogee had pointed out the creatures of some of the farmland below them. When she'd so excitedly grabbed his hoof to take him, Jet was instantly won over. Checking his watch, Jet had realized that they had a little spare time, so he suggested they swing down and take a closer look. They're so cool, Dad. That they are, sweetie. Now be polite, cows are busy too. Jed warned as he smiled at his eager young daughter prancing up to the group of bovines. Oh, why, hello there, dearie. Ain't you just the cutest thing? One of the cows greeted, her accent as thick as molasses. I suppose you're checking out the farm for the first time? Apogee nodded eagerly. Farms are cool, and cows are my favorite. I drink up my milk every morning, don't I, Dad? She looked over her shoulder eagerly at her chuckling father. Yes, you do, hun. Jet smiled as he swept up his daughter's enthusiasm. Now why don't you leave the poor lady alone so she can go back to her day? The cow smiled politely. Oh no, it's no trouble at all. My day is just sitting here chewing on grass, anywho. She laughed, her big barrel heaving with each chortle. Apogee tilted her head curiously. But don't you have to make the milk? Where does the milk come from anyway? Jet blushed, but the cow seemed totally unperturbed as she turned sideways to reveal her udders. Why, right there, dearie, and I don't need to do much to make it. It does it all on its own. Apogee looked at the big pinkish balloon-like udder dubiously, as if she suspected a trick were being played on her. Milk comes from that? She looked at her father for confirmation, who could only nod while trying to hide his light embarrassment. Sure does, sweetie. In fact... The cow turned and grabbed a nearby stool and bucket, placing them next to each other before positioning herself carefully over the bucket. I could use a little bit of milking if you want the full farm experience. Apogee's wings spread out in excitement as she looked over her shoulder with a big beaming smile on her face. Can I, Dad? Can I? Jet nodded, smiling apologetically at the cow. Yes, hon. Just make sure you listen carefully to the nice cow's instructions. Apogee reached forward and took hold of the fat cock in her hooves. This was just like that time, well, except for the fact that there was only one treat expanding from the particular udder, and it was several times thicker than the past teat too. But it also held a very creamy milk that she wanted. Apogee thought naughtily. While grasping strokes, Apogee began to milk her father's cock, beginning her by grasping near the base of his semi-erect penis and working her hooves down the rapidly dropping, expanding length. She could feel the heat rushing in to fill the shaft as hot blood poured into his erection. Man, Jed moaned from above, a throb making his penis jump and his daughter's stroking hooves. Apogee bit her lip in concentration as she focused on the heavy shaft in front of her. She wanted nothing more than to provide her father satisfaction. It was so incredible to be able to have this type of control over him. For so long, he had been the pillar of security and strength in her life. For her to now be able to play with her powerful father with a mere flick of a hoof, it was incredible, even intoxicating. Wow, Dad, Apogee cooed as his cock reached its full length and girth. Apogee could feel the powerful muscles in her father's abdominals, wanting to swing that cock up so that it could rest more naturally, parallel to the table in his body. But she was resisting that force, instead using her hoof to keep him pointed toward the ground as she continued to powerfully stroke him. She chewed on the inside of her lip in frustration as she realized that she could not wrap a single hoof all the way around the thick meat in her grasp. So she reached forward with a wing, gripping it with the delicate feather tips and pulling the slick skin covering the hot, sweaty flesh downward, each stroke milking him, coaxing him, trying to get him to spill his seed on the library floor underneath. Jet was in heaven. His powerful hooves gripped the side of the table as he tried to picture what was going on beneath the table. He tried to convert the incredible sensations of fur, of tender underhoof and delicate feather into a visual picture of what his daughter was doing to him out of sight. He felt the careful milking of her ministrations, always eagerly coaxing and grasping downward, each stroke at the base of his cock starting before the previous one ended with a flick against his swollen flare, creating a continuous series of intoxicating pleasures. And then he felt a wet trace from his stallion hood's tip to the base. A tongue, a nose, a wet feather. He couldn't tell, but it made his eyes roll with pleasure before his little filly started milking him again. And then it was back, a light wet slickness, this time on his hanging balls, already starting to ascend from the building pressure in his loins. Jet groaned aloud again, wanting to encourage the attention on his testicles to continue, but as quickly as it arrived, it departed. He almost couldn't believe it, but it wouldn't be long now before he came again. For what, the 5th time today? He didn't know if he'd ever done that as a colt, let alone a stallion over 40. Man, I'm gonna... And Apogee renewed her efforts as she felt the flesh under her stiffening and jumping, her father's hot blood racing through it and making it stiffer than ever before. She brought her feathers under the dripping cock slit, gathering some of her father's natural lube and slathering it along his ebony shaft, the musky juice's slickness giving his throbbing stallionhood a sexy sheen. Still not enough. She reached a free hoof down to her own honeypot, which had been dripping and aching for attention since she'd started massaging her father. Catching some of her own sweet nectar, Apogee brought it back up and stroking it with a hoof and wing, letting the hot juice lubricate her pistoning, milking action. Fuck. Jet shouted above the table, jumping under his own writhing body. Apogee's eyes widened in wonder as she watched her father's flare fatten and increase in size as his cock began to jump and buck, and she grinned, knowing what came next. Her only regret was that she didn't have a basket to catch the thick cream. A huge throb brought with a thick splatter of Jet's milk, rocketing from the tip of his thick stallion hood to impact with a heavy splatter on the floor next to Apogee. Not caring about the splatter, which flung itself over her seated legs, Apogee quickly returned her hooves to the top of her father's penis, just in time to catch the beginning of the next powerful throb of ejaculate, coaxing it down and out of the fleshy tube with her hooves, so that it would messily explode from the tip of the cock. "Wow, Dad," Apogee exhorted as splatter after splatter of heavy cream shot from her father, each to the sound of him groaning and grunting above. "Let it all out." Whoa. Apogee looked on in wonder as she caught one of the thick ropes of semen on her hoof, the heat of the sticky liquid easily felt through her fur. Fuck, gee, Jed moaned above as his balls caught on the edge of the hastily made glory hole. Apogee brought her hoof to her mouth, licking up the dollop of stallion juice that had been deposited there, savoring the salty sweetness of her father. Her body cried out for more, fresh from the source. Dripping her head down, Apogee tried to get her mouth between her father's cockhead and the floor. No easy task, considering that the long appendage reached almost to the library carpet. Still, the filly was indefatigable, craning her head down to the spurting cock end and catching a blast in her mouth maw, the seed shooting down her yawning throat, almost making her choke with its thick stickiness. Jet groaned out as he felt his daughter's mouth suckling at his cock. Even as she continued to milk his flesh with downward strokes, he instinctively pressed his hips into the tabletop, thrusting to release the last squirts of essence before finally feeling his muscles unwind and relax. A wave of pure satisfaction rolled over Jet, all the blissful agony of his orgasm in his sore back now replaced with the pleasant wash of dopamine that always came after release. His eyes were still lazy, blinking in his head when Apogee came into his field of view, a naughty grin on her face. Before he could say a word, she opened her mouth, letting him see the pearly white liquid filling her lower jaw, his own cum, and she wasted no time in quickly closing her mouth and taking a heavy swallow, before leaning forward and giving her dear old dad a big loving lick across his muzzle. "Feeling better, Dad?" Apogee chuckled, brushing a hoof through her father's mane. Jet groaned, still trying to get his wits about him as his dripping erection bobbed beneath the table. "Sheesh," Apogee teased, lightly slapping the side of Jet's head to keep him from drifting off to sleep. "I guess Mom was telling the truth when she said that stallions are all about the ones and done." She chuckled, and Jet's eyes shot wide open as he pushed himself to sit bolt upright, hearing the teasing words from his daughter. "She said that, huh?" he grumbled as he carefully reached down to extract himself from the makeshift glory hole as he twisted it to a sitting position. "I'll have you know, hun, that your mom would come begging for your pop time and time again, and I never leave a mare hanging." Jet fixed his little girl with a sly smirk, flexing his lower body so that a sizable cock bounced up and down slightly. "Come on, G, you gotta keep control. Like Mom said, don't get swept up in Dad's rhythm. Play along." The young filly thought to herself, trying to maintain the aura of confidence she had just felt moments earlier, but her father had turned that handsome face onto her. "Oh, really? That's not what she said." Apogee coyly closed her eyes so she wouldn't be distracted by her father's bobbing erection, sniffing as she turned her head away teasingly. "And about my count, I think you've had quite a bit more fun than I have today." "Hey!" Apogee squeaked as she felt herself being swept up in her father's forelegs, her light body being easily handled in a princess carry as he walked quickly out of the library. "Oh really, hun? My count has you ahead by at least 3, sheesh, I swear. You've got your mother's fire in you." Jet kicked the door into his daughter's room open, still carrying her as he leaned in and nuzzled her shocked face. Apogee was blushing. She hadn't been carried around like this since she was a little foal. Her father's big, powerful arms were wrapped around her, the heat of his tensed muscles transmitted through his sweaty fur as he carried her to bed. "Well, let's call it even then, for now." Jed grinned as he laid her onto her own bed, chest facing up, his 2 forehooves pinned on either side of her as he pressed his body in close, tipping his muzzle so that the 2 noses were almost touching. "Tell you what, little filly, between now and when we're done, if I haven't made you come as much as me..." He leaned forward and planted a tender kiss on her stunned cheek before straightening to look into her eyes. "I'll admit your mom was right about me." Apogee could only look up and breathlessly at her handsome father, completely swept up by his handsome grin. "I can see why Mom fell for him," Apogee thought, swooning, and silently she nodded. "That's my good little girl. So let the challenge begin." And Jed grinned, dipping his head down, but instead of leaning in to steal a kiss, he continued the descent, heading for his daughter's fillyhood, and Apogee moaned out at the ceiling breathlessly. "Okay, Dad." The challenge had started. 7:09 p.m. Apogee's room. Current score, Apogee 5, Jet 5. Apogee bounced on her father's lap with reckless abandon. She was facing away from her father, who was holding onto the upper arms for dear life as he received the ride of a lifetime. Her hot, twisted insides were coiling and tensing around her father's massive cock. She was already squeaking and flapping her wings in pleasure, her mouth hanging open like some wild animal as she drove her cute little rump down again and again onto her father's lap. "Daddy," Apogee squeaked, each exhortation coming as she bottomed out on her father's fat phallus. Jed unclenched his eyes to look at his daughter's beautiful back, already damp with sweat from the frenzied exertion. His eyes traced down the supple curves of her spine, along the teenage muscles that rippled with intensity as she clenched and unclenched with each of her grinding hip drops, right down to that cute freckled rump. So tight, so pert, while somehow was accepting all of his massive stallionhood impossibly wedged into her tight teenage fillyhood. It was so odd, seeing that bundle of yellow and blue fur in so familiar a position. "Please, Dad, please," the cute 6-year-old filly Apogee begged, her eyes wide as saucers, whining while tugging at her father's legs. "Apogee, come on. We're at the mall. I'm tired. Can't you wait until we get home?" Jed moaned, trying to shrug off his daughter's pleading. "Oh, please, Dad. It's so boring waiting for your dry cleaning to be ready. Can we just play just a little?" Apogee continued trying, her little tugs and whimpering combined with the watery puppy dog eyes, a devastating combo that never failed to tug on Jet's heartstrings, turning him into a pliable ball of mush. "Fine, but only 5 minutes, okay?" Apogee squeaked, clopping her hooves together with a beaming smile as she hopped up onto her father's lap and gave him a tender hug complete with a loving little nuzzle. "Yay! I want to do the cow pony. Let me ride the bucking bull," she shouted, entirely too loud, drawing attention from eyes of passerby. Jet put a hoof to her mouth. "Not too loud now, hon. And don't use the B word until you're older, okay?" Apogee twisted around, situating her bottom on one of Jet's knees before looking over her shoulder with a perplexed glance at her father. "Why not, Daddy? That's the right word for when a bull kicks out and jumps around, right?" Jet sighed, rubbing his temple. "Yeah, hun, it's just... never mind. Ready for your cow pony ride?" Apogee nodded avidly before turning around and gripping her father's knee with both of her hooves. "Ready!" Jet tried to simulate an angry moo before starting to bounce his knee up and down, sending his little girl flying, even while she gripped her leg tightly, cracking madly at the crazy gyration. "Yeehaw! Ride 'em, cowgirl," Jet joked as he continued playing with his beloved daughter, her cute blue hair flying in every direction. "Wee, Daddy, higher!" Apogee laughed uproariously, her innocent smile a beautiful sight to behold. "Make it harder for me to hold on, Daddy, harder!" "Harder, Dad." A teenage Apogee's hips slammed into her father's pelvis, her sopping fillyhood straining to engulf the massive base of his cock. Fuck me harder, Daddy." The horny little girl groaned, her butt grinding with little thrusts against him as she soaked his balls again with a splatter of her juices. Jet reached forward and grabbed his daughter's hips, pulling her down onto himself even more tightly, mashing his cockhead against the deep entrance of her womb, making him groan aloud. Fuck, hon. That's so good. Apogee leaned her head back as she began to moan at the ceiling, the feeling of her darling daddy hilting her, causing shivers to run in rivulets of electricity down her spine. Fuck, Dad, Apogee took a pair of panicky breaths as she strained to drive oxygen back into her spasming body, already well over the cliff edge of a full cascade of an orgasm. I'm coming, Dad. Abogee's eyes widened in shock as she leaned forward to grab her father's knees, holding onto them like desperately drowning pony holds onto a life preserver as her orgasm crashed through her, a wave of muscles relaxing and firing that washed from the base of her neck down to her hoof tips. Jet looked down at his teen daughter lovingly, bent forward and clutching his knee just like she had so many years ago, though in a much different context. Currently, her leaning was perfectly exposing her little tailhole and pink edges of her fillyhood as they stretched to accommodate him. It was incredible to hear the same filly moaning for her daddy as her little ponut twitched and puckered with each milking convulsion of her tight pussy as it grasped to milk him, begging him for the release. Something about the forbidden thought that had just made his little girl come on his dick, and not for the first time that weekend, finally flicked the forbidden switch for Jet too. A painful throb of adrenaline became a blissful release as he felt his flare try to expand in the impossibly tight and steaming insides of his daughter, lodging itself firmly in the deepest part of her velvet-tight tunnel, trapped against the portal to her womb. Daddy, Apogee squeaked out from the lap as she pulled herself up against his knees even tighter, her body feeling the convulsion of her breeding stud's cock inside of her. She could feel her vagina being forced open by the huge flare that had just stretched out inside of her, as she prepared herself instinctively for the flood that would surely come. Jet pulled his daughter down painfully against him, his hooves digging into her pert buttocks as he tried to drive himself into her as deeply as he could just as the first rope of cum exploded into her. And then the next, and the next. With each spurt, he pulled her hips downward powerfully, making Apogee moan out with little grunts as he filled his little girl. Apogee could feel her womb expanding, once again being filled like a balloon by her father's hot, sticky seed. Her belly shifted uncomfortably as he stuffed her uterus with potent batter. But she didn't care. Her tongue felt limp and heavy, lolling out of her mouth as she endured heavy shot after heavy shot with grunts of ecstasy before her father finally finished with a deep gasp. Oh, well, I guess the first round is a tie. 8:24 p.m. Jet's room. Current score, Apogee 9, Jet 6. The sound of Apogee's hooves hitting the glass floor to the ceiling windows resounded through the bedroom. The cool surface felt great against Apogee's burning, sweaty hooves. Their rigorous activity throughout the day was quickly catching up with the little filly, raising her body temperature from the sheer exertion to say nothing of the impact that her excitement and arousal were having. Apogee felt her father take up position behind her, strong hooves reaching forward to grip her flanks as he pressed his bulk into her smaller body, one of his legs pushing her rear leg wider apart to permit his fat penis to slide under her belly and slap wetly up against her teats, the tip reaching up to her belly button. The filly took a moment to look out the window at the beautiful twinkling lights of Las Vegas' downtown's core, as her nickering father leaned in close, whispering something inaudible under his breath into her ear, evoking a memory from a few years earlier. Dad! A 14-year-old Apogee shouted as she ran through the dark corridor of the Van Hoover Aquarium. Look, it's right there, the coelacanth! The young teen's galloping hooves clip-clopped through the fairly empty corridor as she raced ahead. While most ponies would flock to the whale or shark exhibit, Apogee had just done a school project on the elusive fish and gotten top marks. Jet had decided to spoil her by taking her along on his business trip to the northwestern city, as a reward for her solid schoolwork. Jet smiled as his daughter, currently clad in a souvenir hoodie and hat from the aquarium, hopped up onto the railing in front of the huge deep water tank's window. She always had such enthusiasm and zeal, He had no idea how such a bundle of energy could have come from him and Delta's genetics. Neither of them had ever had a fraction of her bouncing spirit.
Dad, look, you can totally see the cosmoid scales. Hey, you can even see his opercular flap.
Apogee pressed her nose against the glass, knocking the souvenir ball cap off her head. Jet leaned in, putting his muzzle close to his daughter's ear. Wouldn't you say that this is a bit of a fishy situation? Apogee groaned, pulling her head back slightly before letting it thump back against the glass in frustration with an audible bonk.
Seriously, Dad? That was so lame.
Jet couldn't help but chuckle as he ruffled his daughter's messy mane. He loved being able to unload terrible dad jokes on his little girl, especially when she was being so eager. Even now, she was still totally focused on the creature in the tank, her breath leaving a faint trace of fog on the aquarium glass. And Apogee's hot breath against the cold apartment glass left heavy mists of fog with each passionate huff of her lungs. Little rivulets of condensation on the window ran together with some of the sweat pouring from her brow as she steadied herself.
Dad,
she groaned, feeling her father's bulk hover over her, careful not to put too much weight on her delicate shoulders. Again, she felt the heavy slap of her father's cock against her tummy as he twitched his muscles before the hot, wet flare began sliding backwards. She shivered as her father's throbbing cockhead was pulled back, leaving a wet trail of pre-cum sliding across her teats and sliding along the last bit of smooth flesh between her breasts and the top of her winking sex. She heard her father groan as he drew his stiffness agonizingly back over her fillyhood and in the process coating it in a slick layer of that bubbling filly cum.
Put it in, Dad,
she groaned, twisting and grinding her butt backwards, trying to will her labia to part and accept his heavy ebony knob. And Jet wasted no time in trying to appease his cock-hungry little girl. With a hoof on her lips for leverage, he began to push forward. It was surprising how much her tight filly snatch would still resist his entry, even after so many spirited sessions throughout the past 2 days. But it still made his eyes roll when his daughter's incredibly tight teenage cunt lips slipped tantalizingly over his flare's wide ridge, letting him immediately slide almost half his length into her, burying his thick rod into her winking depths.
Fuck yes,
Apogee groaned, her little wings flaring out wide in excitement as her dad began to slowly fuck her from behind.
Holy shit, Dad.
Apogee shuffled forward involuntarily, instinctively flinching away from the girthy flesh spreading her filly bits wide. She pulled away to press her damp, sweating chest floof up against the cold window. Jet nickered as he chased after his daughter's sudden retreat, pinning her shoulders and spreading her wings against the glass as he continued to slowly pump into her with methodical strokes, each time a little deeper, a little harder. He was back in control now. No swearing, Apogee. Jet punctuated his admonition with a sharper thrust, bearing his cock up to his medial ring before pulling back for another stroke, as Apogee released a pitter of filly juice from her swollen pussy. It's not befitting of such a beautiful... And another sharp thrust, another pitter of juice from her snatch staining, but failed to permit the medial ring to pass. Young... Pitter, so close on this thrust, yet Apogee's fillyhood still resisted, causing Jet to press his daughter's body against the glass, pulling back and preparing for one potent hip thrust. Lady. And Apogee's hind legs quivered as her father's next thrust spread her impossibly and let him slide into her to the hilt. Apogee felt a guttural moan build deep in her gut. Some primitive part of her brain was melting from the incredible feeling of fullness. The most feminine and animalistic part of her was being crammed with the rigid stallion flesh, such an incredible feeling of completeness. She could feel herself growing addicted to the sensation of being stuffed, even as her little body strained to accept her father's size, the strange contrast to feelings making her eyes roll.
Oh, Buck.
Apogee moaned as her eyes shuddered with an orgasmic wave of pleasure, her feathers ruffling and extending just before she released a heavy gush of filly juice over her father's balls. Good girl, Jet whispered into his filly's ear, punctuated with a sultry commendation, with a little nip before starting to pump his hips softly into his daughter. Now come for your dad. Come all over my dick like a good little filly. Apogee squeaked and hiccuped as she continued to spasm under her father, her exhausted muscles grasping and milking at his fat cock as she was pushed back and forth into the glass by her father's hips, her lips far too tight and grippy to allow him to withdraw even an inch.
Daddy.
Apogee mewed again, her womb twitching and convulsing after her father's cock slit jamming deep inside of her, her cervix twitching, the plant begging, needy kisses that tried to coax the breeding stud to release his seed.
Please, Dad.
And Jet nickered as he felt his own orgasm unexpectedly rush over him, brought on by his daughter's incredibly tight filly cunt's ministrations. Jet couldn't believe how he was somehow able to burst. Time and time again, he was able to draw forth these massive gushing orgasms, each one just as mind-blowing as the last, in a way he never had before, not as the university student, a high school teen, or even a prepubescent young colt. He couldn't understand it. It had to be the little filly tunnel wrapped around him. And he would oblige her hungry snatch's desire for his seat again. And Jet continued pressing Apogee's small, filly-sized body against the glass, squeezing her in blissful agony of the orgasm and pressure. Not a moment later, his balls began to unload into her, testicles slapping noisily against his daughter's wet plot with each release of sticky, heavy cum strands, firing once again into Apogee's womb. Jet clenched his eyes shut, focusing only on the raw sensation of filling his daughter with this rich, thick batter. The incredible feeling of his bulge, of his shaft being milked up the shaft all the way to the flare's tip before exploding outward, again and again. Until he began to feel his seed spilling down his legs as Apogee's filled depths could take no more. 10:45 p.m. Main floor. Current score, Apogee 12, Jet 10. Apogee dragged herself to the kitchen, hooves sliding heavily across the wooden floor from sheer exhaustion. She was panting heavily, mumbling half incoherently to herself as she dripped sweat and juices from her body, leaving a trail of droplets and various liquids back to the stairwell, where her father currently rested in post-orgasmic bliss, having just unloaded another thick load of full batter into her body. Her hooves wavered unsteadily, almost drunkenly, as she tried to stay conscious. Her mind swam with the heady mix of pleasure, neurochemicals, and exhaustion. She needed something to drink to replenish the electrolytes she had lost from sweat, from exertion, and even from just the sheer amount of lost from her filly juices. The sink was agonizingly far, and something in her wanted the cool refreshment of electrolytes of soda or Gatorade, which she knew were kept in the fridge. Apogee stumbled forward, her front hooves gripping the heavily fridge door handles and yanking them open, letting a wash of frigid air spread over her as the double-doored fridge opened wide. Apogee sighed, enjoying the crisp cold air as she grabbed the bottle of her favorite lemon-flavored sports drink, and she wasted no time in cranking the orange bottle top off and chugging deep gulps of flavored liquid. The usually lemony taste seemed closer to liquid nectar in her body's thirsty and drained state. The filly sloppily drank as quickly as she could, wasting almost a quarter of the bottle as it poured down her neck from the corners of her mouth. The ambrosiac wash of fluid, supplant, and lingering taste of her father's cock and stallion fluid that lingered to her muzzle. Apogee felt her little stomach begin to fill, her gut bulging out from the grown size to match the similar bulge situated slightly lower from her stiffening womb, which was still oozing with thick cream from her fillyhood. Apogee groaned, finishing the bottle and sticking her head deeper into the comforting coolness of the refrigerator, grateful for the brief respite from the insatiable fucking that her father had been giving her. Basking in the pure relief she was feeling, Apogee didn't hear her father walking up behind her, his eyes taking in his daughter's lithe form, framed in stark contrast against the harsh, white light of the interior of the fridge. And Jet licked his lips as he looked over his daughter's tight little body still covered in sweat from the copulations. His stiff erection bobbed under his body as he overlooked her, the storm of lust and raw hormonal flesh still coursing through his veins. He couldn't help but swallow as he looked over the curve of her tight little ass, her tail still flagged up in the air, revealing her semen-drooling pussy and her beautiful ponut. "Dad?" Jet looked up from his newspaper in the office, seeing his 15-year-old apogee daughter standing in the doorway, shuffling nervously with a tremendous blush on her face. "Oh, hey, hon." Jet smiled fully and putting away his newspaper as he sat up with a tired groan. "How'd your visit to the doctors go? Did you get your allergy situation sorted?" The still school uniform-clad apogee blushed brighter, looking down at her hooves as her ears burned red with embarrassment. Jet could see that she was clenching a small cardboard box of medication in her left hoof as she kicked at the carpet. And Jet had a horrible thought race through his mind, making him shiver. "Oh, you aren't, oh gosh, pregnant." Jet had felt his heart begin to race as he imagined the worst from his daughter's strange reaction. "What? No." Apogee's wings flared out in shock as she stamped a hoof. I haven't even... Geez, Dad." Apogee huffed, stomping forward and poking her father. "I can't believe you'd say that." Jet let out an internal sigh, thankful that his daughter hadn't been knocked up, and just as happy that she had just accidentally admitted that she was still sexually inactive. "Sorry, hun. But what's up with you acting all shy then?" Apogee took a step back from her father, playing nervously with the hem of her skirt before replying under her breath. "He prescribed me a suppository." And Jet craned his head in closer, having not quite heard what his daughter said correctly. Sorry, what was that?" Apogee grumbled, murmuring again. "I said the doctor prescribed medicine to be inserted in my bottom." And Jet's ears flicked, while totally unable to understand his daughter's embarrassed squeaking as he cracked his head. He asked, "Huh?" "I said the doctor prescribed me medicine that needs to be stuck up my butt." Apogee shouted in frustration, eye clenched as she exhorted the embarrassment. The beat of silence passed, and Jet blushed before he responded. "Oh, suppository medication. I guess I still have those, huh?" Apogee looked like her entire fur color had turned a bright shade of crimson red. "Dad, I need your help to put it in." Jet almost had to do a double take as he gulped heavily. "Me?" Apogee growled, shoving the box of medication into her father's hooves. "I can't do it alone, and I know you used to do it for me when I was younger. A little full." Jet took the cardboard box, opening it and looking at the smaller bullet-shaped suppositories inside, taking one out with his hooves and inspecting it carefully. Turn around, hon." Apogee blushed, a little face of shock popping on her muzzle. "Here? Now?" Jet rolled his eyes. "Come on now, you're making a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be. It's just medication, hun. It'll make you feel better." Apogee nodded slowly, turning around and flipping her gray school shirt up and presenting her 15-year-old butt to her father. And Jet unpeeled one of the little medicine packets, inspecting the little torpedo of hardened glycerin jelly, no wider than a milkshake straw. "Come on now, hun. Bend over." Apogee gulped, lifting her teen butt up higher as she crouched, her chest down slightly, her tail tucked tightly against herself. "Like this?" And move your tail out of the way. It's nothing I haven't seen before." Apogee let out a soft whine and reticently moved her tucked tail softly to one side. Jet found himself almost flinching away, seeing his little girl's fillyhood fully exposed for the first time in years. Her tight little ponut was perched up comfortably above a thin set of immature vaginal lips. A moment of absolute silence passed, and Jet found that he wasn't immediately struck down by Celestia herself from a bolt of pure sunlight out of the sky. He felt himself relax, ever so slightly. Swallowing heavily, Jet pushed the little pointy end of the small suppository up against his daughter's small tail hole. Geez, Dad, give Ophelia a little warning." Jet let out a breath he'd been holding. "Sorry, hon, I'm gonna push it in now." Jet brought the medicine back up against Apogee's quivering rosebud, pressing forward gently, but his daughter's little marshmallow flesh button refused to yield or permit the medicinal to slip in.
Ow, Dad.
Jet sighed. Hang on, hun. He twisted away, quickly moving over to a nearby shelf in his study, opening a small drawer and pulling out a small bottle of lube. And though he tried to apply it to the tip of the medicine clandestinely, Apogee caught a glance of her father using his secret lube stash as she watched him over her shoulder, giggling behind a hoof. Jed grumped, knowing that he'd been busted. Yeah, very funny. This'll make it a bit easier, though. He traipsed back over, secretly grateful for the moment of levity about the whole scenario. Okay, here we go, Apogee. Jet pushed the lubed bullet into his daughter's quivering asshole again, giving it a little press as it began to slip in, before still being resisted by her tight ring of muscles. Sweetie, relax. Loosen up your butt and just let it in. Jet cooed, trying not to think about the subtext. Apogee gulped and tried to unstiffen. Unclenching her backside, she squeaked as the slippery medication finally slipped into her anus. Yikes! She jumped up, the strange feeling of something foreign in her bottom quite alien to her. And Jet quickly turned away, flipping down his daughter's skirt as he did so. There you go, hon. Hope you feel better. A blush, Apogee turned around quickly to the door as she squeaked over her shoulder, Thanks, Dad, gotta go now, gotta die of self-embarrassment. And she slipped out of the room and slammed the door behind her, leaving a stunned and embarrassed father in her excited wake once again. Jet felt the wash of the refrigerator air as he looked over his daughter's firm little plot. Barely a couple of years from that time had passed, but so much had already changed. Long gone was any embarrassment on his daughter's part of exposing herself to her father. Even now she was subconsciously flagging her blue-green tail up in the air so that he could see everything. Long gone was any modicum of modesty on his part to try and look away from his little girl's exposed butt. He was now hungrily licking his lips as he took up position behind her, and long gone was the delicate, untouched slit of his daughter's vagina. Her teen fillyhood, now a set of tight but engorged and erotic lips, parted by the swell of her engorged clit as it drooled a thick cream from its recent stuffed opening. The still panting and unsuspecting filly had no time to react as she felt a stud bury his muzzle into her raised rear end, his tongue snaking out to caress her tailhole, still untouched since he'd fucked her the ass previous day. Huh? Apogee squeaked out, the strange sensation of her pucker being kissed by her father making her wings shoot out and hit the open fridge door. Quickly recovering, she began to settle into the new circumstance, mewing contentedly and wriggling her rump as she basked in the cool fridge air, with her opponent being orally worshipped by the older stallion behind her. The thick lashing tongue wrapping around the inside of her quivering pucker. Enough of that now. Jet grinned, finishing his spelunking session with a delicate kiss on his little girl's anus as he straightened up and once again positioned himself behind her, using the frame of the fridge to position himself so he was standing tall on two hooves behind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to fit into the fridge while she was already there. Dad? Apogee squeaked nervously, feeling the red-hot heat of her father's penis contrasted sharply against the cool air pouring from the fridge, and she felt her father's fat cockhead slide up across her drooling slit, becoming slathered in the drooling mix of combined sex juices, before he pulled it back across her perineum, a prod against her recently wetted asshole. Dad, I don't know. Apogee tensed as she realized her father was preparing to do. She couldn't imagine how her little tailhole would still permit a girthier cock. It had barely been able to fit the day before, and it seemed significantly thicker now. And she shifted, trapped in the fridge's tight confines. Dad, let me get out of the... And she was silenced as she felt her father slap her ass and drive his hips forward, his flare painfully compressing against her tailhole as she was shoved violently forward into the fridge by the pressure of his cock against her asshole. Jet growled fiercely, having once again reverted to his baser, male, rugged stallion instinct, before hissing into her ear. Shh, I'm gonna fuck your little filly ass, and you're gonna love it. Apogee shivered in a strange mix of fear and excitement at being dominated by her father. She willed her body to open up and accept him, to part her little pucker and permit his cock into her asshole. But it seemed impossible, and at the same time she had completely run out of any space as her father had insistently continued pressing forward, bumping her head against the back of the fridge. There was nowhere left to go. She felt a little panic rise in her chest, and the wild breeding stallion behind her began to impatiently hump against her tailhole, sharp little bursts of frightening pain making her heart race.
Wait,
Apogee squeaked, her wings fluttering. She went silent as she heard no response from her usually kind and caring dad, but a small whinny, a loud puff of air from his flaring nostrils as he began to press into her. And he was possessed now, fully animalistic, as he sought to bury his big fat cock in her little, like big male powerful stallion he was. Apogee shivered again, and she did the only thing left to her: surrender. Her body uncoiled and she realized her father was her stud, and she was his broodmare, her little cock sleeve. To be the dominated, to be bred, and to be fucked by him. Her body relaxed as she felt herself melting into the situation, the little pain of the sharp thrusts against her spreading asshole and the little bumps of her head against the fridge fading to nothing against the reassurance and pleasure of being her stallion's broodmare. She felt her tongue slip from her mouth, and her eyes drooped to a half-lidded gaze as her tight pucker slowly, agonizingly, spread wider with each thrust, getting closer and closer to permitting the drooling flare to enter its steaming hot pink interior. Apogee moaned out, trying to hump backwards slightly to force the fat dark brown knob into her, totally blind to any pain as she was flooded with endorphins. A hearty smack filled the air as one of Jet's hooves slapped down against her rump with ferocity, leaving a red mark as he dove forward with his most insistent push yet, slamming forwards with a loud whinny. Finally, Apogee's tight, filly, muscular ring of flesh parted and let his ridge slide into her forbidden interior. "Fuck, you're so fucking tight," Jet groaned, feeling his fat cock absolutely vice-gripped by his daughter's tight anal tunnel. He pressed forward, his daughter's ass accepting more and more of the stallionhood thrusting into her.
"Yes, buck my ass."
Apogee groaned out that strange feeling of being so impossibly filled in such a naughty part of her body. Jet obliged her, continuing to buck his daughter, taking his hooves off of the frame of the refrigerator and placing them on the back of his little girl's back as he continued thrusting into her butt. Jet couldn't believe it. The incredible feel of his daughter's impossibly tight, hot, twisting rear love tunnel. He slipped another slick inch of his girthy cock into her, making her squeak, tense up, and completely lock down on his shaft. "Loosen up for me," he groaned, each thrust now moving his entire daughter's body, and once again bumping her against the tight confines of the chilly fridge. But both were too caught up in the unique and seductive pleasure of their forbidden sex to give much a care of anything but their frenzied coupling. Apogee's eyes began to roll up into her head as she felt a telltale wash of dopamine begin to flood her senses, as her burning hot clitoris winked out and mashed against the freezing surface of one of the fridge's shelves. She felt her tight fillyhood clenching, gripping, as if trying to milk a phantom stallionhood, even though her dad's cock currently driving deep in her ass.
"Fuck, I'm coming."
Apogee felt the rippling sensation of dancing electricity crashing through her again as she wet herself, the fridge, and her father with a splash of filly cum, the hot juice contrasting sharply against the cold fur of their legs. Jet groaned loudly as he felt his little girl's tailhole locked tight around him with her orgasmic gripping, the convulsions clenching and releasing around the head of his cock, the only part he could fit into her, but it was enough to push him over the edge. He grunted as Jet felt a throb through his penis, his flare trying and failing to flatten against his little girl, as the sheer tightness prevented the required blood from rushing into his cockhead to make it expand. "Celestia," Jet screamed as his shaft throbbed to no avail. Apogee clenching tightly was preventing him from ejaculating, and the pain of his denied orgasm was a mix of excruciating pleasure and pain, making stars explode in his vision.
Daddy.
Apogee moaned, her orgasm finally starting to subside, the spraying juices becoming a trickle as she slumped on the shelf of the fridge, her tongue lolled out of her mouth as her muscles completely relaxed. Finally coaxed by the incredibly tight muscles that had not yet relaxed, Jet felt his flare harden and twitch, the newfound rigidity finally allowing his boiling cum to burst from his cock. The sense of overwhelming relief was incredible and made his breath completely catch in his lungs. Splatter after splatter of juice, filling his daughter's asshole, still plugged by his cockhead. Apogee grinned slightly in her ecstasy, lazily sucking on her drool that dripped from her mouth as she felt her father twitching and groaning behind her as her butt was flooded with warmth. It made her so happy to know that she had totally satisfied her stallion. She wiggled her butt, trying to do everything she could to enhance this perfect moment for her beloved dad as he continued to shudder and convulse inside of her. And suddenly, a sound came from the front door, and Jet and Apogee hopped up in absolute fright, both bonking their heads on the inside of the fridge's door in sheer panic. Apogee looked up at her father with fear in her eyes. His cock was still in her asshole, and there was someone at the door. Maybe it was just a coincidence, or a figment of their imagination. It was the middle of the night, after a... Oh no. 11:15 p.m. Main floor. Current score, Apogee 13, Jet 11. Just a second. Jet shouted nervously towards the unknown visitor. He started turning awkwardly in the kitchen as Apogee maneuvered underneath him. They were both awkwardly and delicately trying to carefully remove the fat plug of rigid cock from the teen's filly asshole.
Wait, careful, Dad.
Apogee scolded as her father pulled himself out of her a little too sharply. Jet groaned as their union was severed with a squelching pop, before he finally came free from her tight tailhole. Apogee twitched slightly as the act sent a little sharp twinge of pain through her butt as she rubbed her delicate plot to ease the sudden pain. "Sorry, hon," Jet grimaced, apologizing meekly. Apogee frowned, grumbling at her father as she continued to rub her butt, massaging away any remaining pain.
Just go already. They're still waiting for you, whoever it is."
Jet quickly trotted towards the front entrance, grabbing a nearby tea towel from where it was hanging on a handle of the oven. He needed something to cover himself before opening the door. Jet scampered over to the door, hurriedly reaching out to undo the deadbolt, but just as he was about to touch the unlocking toggle, he was surprised to hear the sound of a key sliding into a lock and clicking the bolt open on its own. Thinking quickly, Jet reached forward and put his hoof on the doorknob, strategically positioning himself behind the door so as to prevent it from being fully opened, as well as making sure that he couldn't reveal his lower half. In his current state, if he was exposed, it would prove to be quite embarrassing. He was still rock hard and dripping pre-cum despite the fact that his heart was beating out of his chest with sheer terror. Just who was behind the door? The door creaked open a leg length before Jet jammed his shoulder against it and poked his head out into the gap, more than a little bit annoyed that some pony would dare to burst into his private domicile so rudely. "Excuse me, just what do you think?" Jet paused, his mouth open in a mixture of shock and relief when he saw his attorney, Diamond Gavel, in the act of telekinetically pushing in his door, his emergency key to his apartment still in her hoof. The gray-furred unicorn looked up in surprise. "Oh, so you were able to hear me. Sorry, boss, I couldn't tell, what with all the moaning and screaming I've been hearing for the past 20 minutes standing out here." Jet swallowed deeply, trying to clear his throat and compose his thoughts. For the past day, he'd been so engorged in his and Apogee's wild sexual adventure, he'd pretty much forgotten that there was even a world outside his door, away from his daughter's dripping fillyhood. "Diamond, what are you..." Jet began, still trying to keep the door jammed again, being fully opened, as he hid behind its edge, only letting his beautiful corporate attorney see the protruding face and head. Diamond Gavel rolled her eyes behind her stylish glasses. "What am I doing here, boss? Seriously, you can't tell me that you actually haven't realized that you've racked up at least a dozen noise complaints from your downstairs neighbors so far this evening." Jet's eyes widened, pupils shrinking as he came to a realization. All those screams, those thumping thrusts, the groans, the moans. Diamond shook her head lightly, small strands of mane not done up in her bun flicking lightly over to her professional cut blazer. I mean really, boss. I had to put in a favor to send away a couple of cops not 10 minutes ago, who had been called in to bust down the door because they were sure some pony was being tortured in here. Well, I wouldn't say tortured. Apogee's voice snarked from behind Jet. The little filly had walked in the entrance hallway as well, eager to join in the conversation. Hush, please, Jet whispered to Apogee as he rubbed his temple with a free hoof. Jet's eyes widened in panic again as he suddenly felt himself begin to slide back away from the door as Diamond Gavel's telekinesis forced him back, pushing open the door to step partway inside nonchalantly. Come on, boss, let me in. Diamond pushed her way further into the apartment's entrance, sighing as she did so. I gotta make sure every pony is here and doing okay. Diamond paused as she took the first lungful of air. Diamond Gavel's nostrils flared in and out, her face scrunching up as she took in a noseful of the heavy, musky air of the condo. Holy Celestia. It's like pure, unadulterated sex. By Luna's teats, that's insane. Jet watched his attorney's face go flush and her tail flick from side to side while he carefully closed the door behind her. He awkwardly shifted the tiny tea towel in front of his body so he thought it was woefully adequate to the task of covering his rigid stallion hood. He took a hesitant little sniff of the air. What do you mean? Jet could tell the air was a bit stale, but are you kidding, boss? The air smells like you crammed a bus full of teen filly scouts headed to the emergency spring heat season of Camp Friendship and mixed it with a boat full of earth pony stallions who have been at sea for 3 months. Apogee lifted up her wing, ducking her nose under it and smelling herself. Do I smell that bad? It's not just you, kiddo. Diamond sighed as she walked by the little filly as she noticed the conspicuous drippings falling from behind her. It's your father, too. Diamond peeked into the condominium, as if she were surprised that it was still in one piece. Honestly, it's as if both of you were hanging your sweaty plots over a space heater. Diamond turned to look at the little Pegasus filly with sympathy. Are your heats always this heavy? I used to have some doozies when I was younger. Apogee flushed. She hadn't expected to suddenly have an intruder pop into the apartment and start asking her all sorts of questions and commenting on her and her father's odors. She didn't know where she got off thinking it was okay to act so intimate. It's my first one. Apogee blushed, suddenly feeling like a little foal in a room of grown-ups, shrinking under the gaze of both of the older ponies looking at her. Jet spoke up, still holding his throbbing erection with the ridiculously small towel. I don't understand it myself, Diamond. Not that I've gone through that many heats with females, but I can tell you that I have never reacted like this before. Speaking of, boss, you can drop the tea towel already. Diamond gave a little grin. It's nothing I haven't seen before, and you just look ridiculous right now. Jet sighed, his shoulders sagging as he threw the tea towel aside, revealing his pre-cum dripping, girthier than usual, dark brown stallion hood, which promptly took that perfect opportunity to slap wetly against Jet's belly, as if announcing its presence loudly to Diamond Gavel. Whoa, it seems a little larger? Excited than I remember it being. Diamond arched an eyebrow, and Jet went on quickly, coughing to cover his embarrassment. That's what I was about to say. I don't get it, I've never felt like this before, and we both downed a gallon of that bucking suppressant to boot. Suppressant? Diamond's eyebrows arched one even higher. Can I see? Jet nodded and started toward the first floor bathroom to find the bottle, only to have Apogee grab his arm as he walked by her. She looked up at him and whispered, Dad, just who is this mare? Why is she here anyway? Apogee was getting more and more angry. Not only was this strange lady acting entirely too familiar with her and her father, it seemed Diamond knew all about the two of them somehow. Even more infuriating, she was now actively interrupting her very special time with her father, and her mare instincts were telling her to get this potential new competitor out of here, now. It's okay, hun. Diamond's my right hoof mare at Equestriero. We can trust her. Jet patted his daughter head fatherly, which only made Apogee more angry. How could her father treat her like a little foal in front of this woman? She's a friend, hun. Jet trotted away, leaving the two mares to walk into the living room area with one another, Diamond smiling at Apogee in her friendly manner as the filly glared back at her with suspicion. Hey, Apogee, grab a seat with me here. I'd like to chat for a minute, if that's okay with you. Diamond motioned at the couch before she primly sat herself on one of the cushions and patted the spot next to her. Still eyeing her with a suspicious glare, Apogee made a point of choosing the love seat adjacent to Diamond's offered spot as if to explicitly tell Diamond that she did not trust her, as far as she could throw her. Apogee plopped her damp bottom onto the seat, staring silently over the coffee table at Diamond, letting her sit in silence. Diamond grinned a bit at the teenage filly's antics. You know, Apogee, we've actually met before. It was last year when you came to the office housewarming party. Have you bucked my dad? Apogee asked with a growl, cutting her off. Diamond's head pulled back a bit in shock, her eyes widening slightly as she was caught off guard. What? Diamond took a moment to consider the little filly in her situation, and she quickly realized that Apogee was probably thinking in her current addled state. Apogee, I'm not here to steal your dad from you. I'm here to make sure both of you are safe, happy, and well, nothing more. I'm a friend. Diamond tried to give as genuine a smile as she could generate. Apogee just glared more sharply. You didn't answer my question. Her voice was icy and serious. Diamond coughed again, slightly surprised at the forcefulness of the little filly. No. She hesitated a half moment, considering before completing her reply. We never slept together. We have a strictly professional relationship. I wouldn't ever permit anything different. Apogee's eyes squinted, her glare becoming more intense as she cocked her head, her body language clearly conveying that she wasn't buying Diamond's story. Oh, really? So how come you were able to remember the regular look of my dad's pee? Apogee hesitated. She wasn't some fool, she was a mare protecting her stallion from this hussy. My dad's cock. Diamond sighed, rubbing her temple, knowing she'd been busted. Okay, kid, cards on the table. Your dad hit on me once years ago. We started making out pretty hot and heavy, but then I found out who he was and stopped things. I didn't want to earn any job on my back and made that clear to him. We never slept together. Now it was Diamond's turn to use a more serious tone, and she had much more practice than the filly sitting across from her and being ice cold and dead set. And as long as I work for him, we never will. Diamond fixed Apogee's eyes with hers, staring deeply into her. Apogee swallowed nervously, momentarily overwhelmed by the mare's earnesty. She could tell that Diamond was telling the truth. Here we go, found it. I just rolled behind the sink. Jed murmured, suddenly walking into a room while holding the bottle of medicine he'd gotten from a local apothecary that morning. Diamond reached over and snatched the bottle with her telekinesis, as Apogee motioned for her father to sit next to her. Jet looked cautiously at his daughter, but didn't hesitate to sit with her on the love seat across from Diamond. He did arch an eyebrow when, as soon as she sat down, his daughter glommed him, wrapping him in a jealous hug. What's gotten into you? Jet extracted himself from his daughter after returning her embrace, still feeling very awkward to be so touchy-feely with his daughter in front of Diamond. Nothing. Apogee broke the hug, returning to her normal seated position, but keeping a wing extended, effectively shielding Diamond from being able to see her father's massive bobbing erection, even though she was preoccupied inspecting a half-full bottle of medication. Diamond hummed, turning the bottle about in her magic as she adjusted her glasses, still inspecting the strange symbology on the label. You both know that this is an aphrodisiac on overdrive, right? This is a restricted medicine called Zesper. Both Apogee and Jet stiffen. What? Both asked at the same time. My zebrakin's a little bit rusty, but I'm pretty sure that this part says do not consult a shaman if your erection lasts longer than 6 hours. This is a normal side effect. She pointed at a short line of symbols. Seriously, this stuff is illegal in half the cities of Equestria. Who sold this to you as a suppressant? Diamond's nostrils flared again. There's probably enough of the medication hanging about in the air for your sweat alone to close 2 ponies for the whole weekend. Jet swallowed. I got it from a place a couple of blocks away. Diamond grimaced. Oh yeah, that's a tiny outfit. Not even worth suing for the screw-up. Unless you feel like owning it, I'd say the best part is just let it slide. But you guys both definitely took way too much of this stuff. Jet gulped. Should we go to a hospital? He looked down at Apogee, more worried for her. Diamond shook her head quickly. No, it seems like this should wear off in another 2 or 3 hours. There shouldn't be any deleterious effects according to this, as long as... Diamond looked at Apogee quickly, a nervous glance passing over her features. You are on birth control, right? Apogee blushed heavily, pulling her wings around her slightly as if to shield herself from the embarrassment of the moment, before she nodded. Good, your father said that was the case. Diamond looked over at Jet, unable to resist the desire to quickly inspect his bobbing dark brown cockhead, no longer shielded by Apogee's wing. Even as she glanced at it, a little spurt of clear precum trickled from the swollen cock slit, trailing over his flare and down the thick shaft. Jet gulped and blushed at the scrutiny. Diamond burned slightly herself, before putting the medication down on the coffee table. And it seems like you're lubricating enough for the amount of sex you're having. Nothing worse than the friction burn, but still, the medication mentions making sure to stay hydrated and lubricated. Another little trickle of Stallion's pre-juices trickled over Jet's fat flare, making Diamond wipe her mouth slightly with her hoof and her blush brighten across her features. Apogee hopped up onto all fours with an angry scrunch face, flaring her wings at once again shielding her father's meat from Diamond's eyes. Stop ogling my dad. Diamond chuckled, seeing a little drip of filly juice fall from between Apogee's legs. Seems like you're still good too. Apogee just puffed her cheeks, annoyed at the mare's confident intimacy with them. Diamond ignored her glare and looked over at Jet pointedly. Boss, you can go take a leak or grab us some drinks or something. I need to chat with your daughter alone for a second. Apogee growled, shaking her head angrily at Diamond's request without letting her eyes leave the unicorn mare's face. Jet chuckled nervously. Actually, Diamond, what are you doing here, besides the noise complaint? Diamond sighed before replying. Mostly just making sure you're safe, really. But now that I'm here, I kind of have to make sure every pony here is okay. I'll be out of your mane in a minute. I just want to chat with your daughter. Jet nodded, slowly standing up. He was almost stopped by Apogee reaching out a hoof to stop him as she looked up at him with a pleading face. Dad? Just answer Miss Gavel's questions, hon. Won't take a moment, okay? He bent down and gave her a little peck on the cheek. Love you. Jet quickly flapped his wings, turning the corner into the kitchen. Just let me know when you two are finished with your mare talk or whatever. And there was a few moments of silence between Apogee and Diamond as they sat silently on the couch before Diamond spoke up. So, you really love your dad, huh? Apogee blushed, nodding her head silently. I won't bother you too much about this, kiddo. Jeez, it's just me, or is it kind of warm in here? Diamond pulled her shirt collar before she stood up quickly, shifting over to Apogee's love seat, taking a seat next to her so she could be closer. I just want to make sure that you are okay here. Diamond looked carefully at Apogee, eyes set on a sign of distress in her response. Of course I'm okay. My dad loves me like crazy. He's the one who would make sure I'm okay if there was a problem, not you. Diamond nodded, holding up a hoof defensively. I get you, kid, I really do. You must realize that it's not the most common scenario for fillies and your fathers to do this sort of thing. Apogee huffed. So what? It's not common for all sorts of different things to happen. I love my dad and he loves me. Diamond persisted, patting Apogee's leg. I understand, but are you sure it isn't just your heat talking? That isn't just the aphrodisiac. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. Hey, even I'm starting to get a little warm, just from the damn smell in this place. A little filly like you could easily be No! No! Apogee shouted then sighed. I've thought about this for a long time. It just sort of happened this weekend, but I've wanted it to happen for a lot longer than that. Diamond nodded, rubbing Apogee's leg and getting a little closer. Okay, kiddo. Gotta admit, you've got a lot of courage. I just want to let you know, if you ever feel confused or like you need some pony to talk to or help you, just think of me as an older sister you can rely on. Apogee looked over at Diamond Gavel with a curious glance. The mare was smiling at her with such friendship. She was beautiful too, and she smelled amazing. Just a hint of vanilla. I'm here for you. Diamond whispered, her hoof starting to make rubbing circles along Apogee's knees slowly, moving to her thigh. Both their eyes began to dip reflexively. Apogee felt her heart thumping. Was this really happening? This mare was suddenly leaning in to kiss her. Apogee nervously started to close her eyes as the comforting touch of the unicorn soof was tracing up her thigh, getting incredibly close to... Apogee squeaked, her wings shooting out in a mixture of excitement and surprise, and Diamond's eyes suddenly shot open as she blushed brightly, snatching her hoof back. Holy hey, I'm so sorry. I was about... Oh my gosh. She pulled out quickly to Jet in the other room. Boss, I gotta go. Apogee sat there stunned and blushing. She'd almost kissed a mare. Diamond looked over her shoulder at Apogee with a sympathetic smile. Sorry, kiddo. It's just... It was all the damn smell and the meds hanging in the air. I mean, you're cute and all, but I wouldn't... Anyway, back to what I was saying. I was serious if you ever needed some pony to talk to. Apogee just nodded, still embarrassed, as Diamond quickly tried to flee the awkward situation. Jet trotted in from the kitchen, intercepting his attorney on the way back to the door. Everything okay, Diamond? Diamond glanced over at her boss, her hungry eyes tracing over the massive erection bobbing under his belly. Her nostrils flared as she caught another heady whiff of the stallion's essence, his masculine musk. She couldn't help but lick her lips while looking at that strong jawline, and Diamond felt her tail bobbing up in the air, having unconsciously flagged up in preparation to be bred by the hunk in front of her. She slapped her face quickly with a hoof, taking a breath and holding it as she trotted more quickly towards the front door to make her escape. Yeah, boss. All's well, I just gotta get out of here before the damn scent gets to me. She turned away from Jet into the entrance of the hallway, reaching out towards the doorknob with a shaky hoof. Jet's eyes widened as he saw his attorney's plot, her rear end fully exposed to her because her tail had flicked seductively up in the air, revealing her plump marehood, slightly slickened by her growing arousal. He'd never seen her like this. Diamond, are you okay? Jet swallowed, reaching out with a hoof to touch his attorney's flank reassuringly. The moment he grazed his skin, she groaned out suddenly. No, Celestia. Diamond groaned as she shivered suddenly. The unicorn mare's fat clitoris throbbed out of its holding place 3 times in rapid succession, each time flashing the tight, twisting pink heat of her clenching marehood to her boss. On the third powerful wink, Diamond felt a squirt of mare juice splatter to the floor. She had just wet herself. And so she tore open the door, escaping outside and quickly turning around with a burning blush on her face. She was furious with her body for betraying her, totally embarrassed. Boss, this never happened. Understand? She pointed a hoof at Jet, then shakily at the splotch of clear liquid she'd left on her employer's entrance hallway. Sorry, I've gotta go now. Be careful. Jet nodded, trying not to chuckle at the normally well-composed attorney's cracked facade. I'll send the cleaners on. Oh, hey. She groaned out again as Jet saw another squirt of liquid pit her to the floor behind Diamond Gavel. The Celestia's fiery teats. That zebra stuff is insane, boss. Just the smell. You should pour the rest of that crazy brew down the drain. A red-faced Diamond Gavel slammed the door before Jet could lambast her with a witty repartee. Jet was about to burst into laughter as he turned away from the door before he was knocked to the floor. He'd just been hit by a blur of diminutive, pure yellow speed. 11:45. Entrance hallway. Current score Apogee 13, Jet 11. Jet was caught in a tumble of limbs, fur and feathers, as he was tackled to the floor in a heavy heap, the world rolling about crazily in his vision before ending up on his back. Jet's protest was instantly cut off by a heavy weight landing on his hips and a pair of lips smashing themselves into his. Apogee had quickly scampered so that she was mounting him, currently thrusting her muzzle into his. His lips were assaulted by a hot pink tongue lashing at the entrance to his mouth, trying to force its way inside, and as soon as he tried to say something in protest, it did. Apogee's tongue ran with enthusiasm through his mouth, playing over his teeth and wetly tangling with his own. Jet tried to push himself up off the floor, putting an elbow underneath himself to try and gain some more leverage, but he had no chance against the filly in the superior mounted position. She was slammed down onto his back, with his daughter's hooves pressed themselves down into his shoulders, perfectly positioned in such a way as to make it more difficult for him to budge even with the light amount of leverage, leaving him completely at the mercy of the little teen filly, who was pouring herself into the kiss being applied, gasping and yearning for more. Just as he found himself running out of breath, Apogee broke the embrace, pulling back to stare down at her father, a little strand of saliva still connecting her lower lips to his.
I like seeing you put in your place, Dad, underneath me.
Apogee wriggled her hips, making Jet look down as her fillyhood protruding clitoris grinding against the top side of his shaft. He moaned, a trickle of hot filly juice spilling onto his nethers as his daughter pleasured herself on top of him.
I think you were spending a little too much time looking at that other mare, Daddy.
Apogee growled sultrily as she continued to grind her haunches against her supine father.
And I think you might have forgotten.
Apogee tilted her butt up slightly, making one hoof from her father's shoulder, bringing it down to grip her father's thick shaft and maneuver his girthy cockhead so that it was aligned with her snatch.
That you belong to me, Dad, and I'm not letting you go.
Jet looked over at his 5-year-old daughter, nervously, fear in his eyes. He was taking her flying for the first time today. According to the books he'd read throughout the previous night, including Pegasus, Parenting for Dummies, and Your First Flight, Learning to Glide the Modern Way. It was apparently better if this was done by the mother of the Pegasus foal, but Jet knew the odds of that happening were slim to none. So instead he had spent the entire morning taking Apogee through the basics, explaining to her how her little wings worked, how it was normal to be scared, and that he'd teach her as slow and fast as she wanted. The little filly had not hesitated one bit. She was practically bouncing with energy at the idea she could be flying on her own by the end of the day. Jet had even had to quickly grab her when she had immediately tried to jump off the edge of the cliff that they'd hiked up to. She was realizing very quickly that he was his nervous one, not his daughter.
Come on, Daddy,
little Peepsqueak whined.
Show me how you zoom about already, just like the Wonderbolts do.
The little Apogee danced on her hooves as she begged her father to more quickly consult the reference material he was flipping through and just get to business of actually showing her how to fly. Okay, hun, I guess we can do some assisted gliding? Jet had thumbed several chapters forward through his manual. Apogee obviously wouldn't need any of the multiple chapters on not needing to be afraid, or any of the multiple other chapters on postmodernist views of child rearing. He remembered his mother practically pushing him off of a cliff with almost no warning. These overly complicated feelings, heavy, new age methods, were just frustrating. Just wanted to get to the action already. Apogee clambered up onto her father's shoulders, peeking up over the page he was reading, which showed a diagram of a little Pegasus being held up by a grown Pegasus in a hug, belly to belly, as they soared through the sky. The grown-up was on the bottom, letting the foal experience the sensation of normal flight without the risk. The description under the diagram read, "Holding your foal in your arms will make them feel safer than riding on your back."
Ooh, let's do it, Daddy.
Apogee squeaked, bouncing back and forth on the ground before grabbing her father's hoof and dragging him to the cliff edge. Apogee, wait a second. Jet scolded as he tried to quickly scan the remainder of the page. There was a whole chapter on the different potential long-term effects of holding with both arms versus one arm, and
whee, here we go.
Jet looked up to see his daughter jump off the cliffside, still holding his hoof. Not again. Apogee! Jet jumped after his daughter, barely keeping hold of her hoof to pull her back to his chest in the tight hug, before he extended his wings, allowing him to start to glide, before they both plummeted out of the sky. Apogee cheered from his chest, where he was clenching her, squeezing her so tightly that it felt like he might break her ribs. They soared through the sky, the blue background punctuated by only a few white fluffy clouds. Perfect flying weather. Jet breathed easier, his heart finally slowing down, the incredible sense of terror finally abating. He flipped onto his back so that Apogee could ride up right side up and could get the complete experience of gliding.
Dad, you're hurting me. You're squeezing too hard.
Apogee groaned, shuffling and shifting in his grasp, pushing away with her hooves against his chest to try and break free, despite the fact that they were thousands of feet in the air. Apogee, Jet almost shouted, anger rising now and replaced with the fear of what he had felt before. You scared me. You can't do that. I thought I was gonna lose you. He growled, looking down at the little filly perched on his chest, who had just extended her wings to catch some of the rushing air for herself. Completely unperturbed, with a giant smile on her face, the little filly just looked up at her father and grinned.
Don't be a scaredy pony, Daddy. I was holding your hoof, and I'm holding you now. Don't worry, I promise I'm not letting you go.
Jet sighed, looking at his little girl clenched so tightly to his body as she rode on his belly, her mane whipping about in her face in the stream of air. Apogee's mane was whipping about her head, similar to all those years before, only this time she was riding her father's fat cock right down to its very base. Jet was pinned in unmoving bliss, his little girl's hooves keeping him stuck to the ground as her tight filly snatch clenched at his shaft, now fully hilted inside of her.
Fuck yes. You like that, Dad?
Apogee groaned, wriggling her hips slightly again, teasing Jet while riding him.
You like my tight little pussy wrapped around your big fat cock?
Jet blushed. It was strange to hear his daughter being so aggressive again, but he liked it. He was about to open his mouth to reply when Apogee took the opportunity to lean in and dive her tongue into her mouth again. Apogee's tongue was dominating his, all while he kept his incessantly thrusting and humping against his pelvis, trying to jam more of his thick steinhood impossibly into her snatch. Apogee's hooves wrapped around his shoulders as she pulled herself against him with a ferocious strength, mashing their chests together, one another, as they pressed her muzzle deeper and deeper into his face, jamming her tongue as far down his throat as she could. Jet's throaty groan was lost in his daughter's kiss as she began to insistently grind on the base of his shaft, riding him to oblivion until finally, inevitably, he couldn't take no more. He began to feel himself losing hot rope after rope of coming to his daughter again, Jet's eyes rolling lazily in his face. But he could still see Apogee break their kiss and look down at him, chuckling softly as he unleashed into her.
Yes, Dad, that's it.
Apogee giggled, grinding her winking clit into his pubic bone to coax more of Jet's orgasm from his fat steinhood.
Give it all to me, Daddy. All to me.
Jet moaned as he felt his daughter's cunt milking another burst from his aching flare embedded deep inside of her.
Good boy, Daddy. I told you I'd never let go.
1:45 a.m. Bathroom floor. Current score Apogee 20, Jet 18. The entrance hallway was empty, but there was evidence of the pair's sexual congress throughout the apartment. Clattered pots, disheveled hanging pictures, spatters and splatters of unspeakable juices everywhere. Currently, the tumultuous pair had made their way to the first floor bathroom on their sexual adventure. Jet was moaning out as he thrust forward, still mounted over top of his daughter, making her slide on her back against the cool tile of the bathroom floor. His cock wasn't buried inside of her, though it had been for most of the past few hours. Somehow they had ended up with his little girl on his back and Jet's fat steinhood resting over her belly, partially nestled against her small tits. Apogee quickly crossed her legs, trapping the rigid penis between her thighs, pulling him tightly against her sopping pussy before encouraging her father to continue thrusting, allowing him to perform outer course with her soft inner thigh fur.
Come on, Dad, fuck my legs.
Apogee chuckled, sliding her tongue out at her father, still hovering over top of her. Jet grinned and grabbed his daughter's legs, using them as leverage to start thrusting back and forth. Like this? Apogee laughed as she began sliding backwards on the bathroom floor, reaching her hooves to stroke the top of her father's cock as he fucked her hard through the junction of her legs, his length rubbing over her sensitive nipples and across her sticky, dampy belly of fur.
You're gonna make a mess on my face again, Dad.
Apogee pouted, still sticking her tongue out playfully. Jet grinned, picking up the pace of his thrusting, the flare of his cock reaching up almost to his daughter's chin as he slammed his hips against the cushion of her butt. Better believe I will, hun, Jet grimaced as his flare began to flatten. 2:30 a.m. Living room. Current score Apogee 21, Jet 20. Apogee collapsed on her back, panting, her weight resting on top of the coffee table in the living room. She let out a light mewl as she felt her father pull out of her still twitching pussy, making an audible pop as it did so. Apogee could hear her father stand up and walk drunkenly towards the kitchen, patting her lovingly on her sweaty head as he passed her. She turned her neck to watch him, his softening cock hanging floppily beneath his barrel, leaving a dripping wet trail of cum behind, as it dipped its sticky strands from its flare's tip. Want a water? Jet asked, as he opened the fridge, grabbing 2 bottles. Apogee grunted and nodded, prompting Jet to toss her one. She squeaked in surprise, barely managing to catch it on her stomach. She still stood too exhausted to sit up. Apogee cracked open the top, tossing aside the plastic cap before lifting it to her muzzle and tilting it back to drink it down. She almost choked. It was hard to drink from a supine, upside-down position. but she thirstily began to swallow down the crisp, clear water without even pausing to take breath. Jet trotted back over to the kitchen, feeling his heartbeat beating out of his chest. For some reason, he found it incredibly sexy to watch his little girl swallow down mouthful after mouthful of water while still on her back. He found himself quickly stiffening, as his stallion-like energy returning with each little swallow of water by Apogee, and each bulge of liquid slid down the girl's slender throat. Apogee finally broke the seal between her mouth and the bottle with a little pop, letting a hearty, satisfied sigh. Jet grinned naughtily. He couldn't help himself, stepping up so that he was straddling his daughter's head beneath him. He let his sticky, half-erect cock land heavily next to his daughter's head with a wet, heavy thwap. Apogee tilted her head to the side, seeing her father's thick, drooling meat there, and licked her lips. Apogee and Diz were sitting in the library chuckling. Between the two 14-year-old fillies was an open magazine carefully positioned inside of a textbook, ready to be quickly covered up in case some enterprising teacher were to decide to inspect this forgotten section of the library. Holy hey, Diz, how can she fit all of that in her mouth? Apogee laughed, pointing with a hoof at the picture of the Play Cult magazine, which showed a beautiful unicorn mare holding a stallion shaft against her muzzle. A blushing Diz shook her head before mumbling quietly, I don't know. It seems way bigger than the ones that Miss Kinnicker showed us during the boring lecture in health class. Apogee chuckled, flipping the page. Yeah, but I bet they only show smaller ones in health class textbooks and films, Diz. They do that so none of the cults don't feel self-conscious. She flipped another page and felt her wings extend outward in excitement as she pointed and exclaimed, Whoa, look at this one. She fitted all the way in. The unicorn mare in question had taken the stallion's cock all the way to his hilt inside of her throat. Whoa, Diz murmured. But you were saying the ones in class are smaller? Real ones are this big? She asked, somewhat scared, her pointing to a very well-endowed stallion about to mount this beautiful mare. Apogee nodded conspiratorially. Yeah, at least I think so. I saw my dad's once he was getting out of the shower. It was at least as big as these ones. Apogee flipped the page again. Haven't you ever seen one of your brothers pop a stiffy? You must have at least one. Diz blushed harder. No, I haven't, G. And I wouldn't look. Whenever sex stuff comes up, you can be such a perv. Diz swallowed nervously, looking at the picture before going on. And if, cold weenies are really that big, maybe I'm not interested in all of this sex stuff. That must hurt. Diz pointed at the picture of the unicorn mare, her mouth and tail hole and mare hood stuffed with thick stallion cock. I guess that is a little scary looking, Apogee admitted, but she seemed to be liking it. Apogee pointed at the drooling face of the mare. Besides, it probably is not that hard to fit one in, as you're thinking it's like, you eat these bananas every day. Diz looked over at her friend skeptically through her thick glasses. Apogee, seriously? What? Well, for one, those. She pointed at the stallion hood on the next page, practically captured in frame with rigid exploding over the unicorn mare's face, aren't bananas, and I don't eat my bananas like that. She pointed back at the mare on her back, getting face-fucked by one of the stallions. And I don't think we could even do that with a banana without choking. You think so? Apogee gulped nervously. She wanted to seem like a big mare, but all this sex stuff was so new, so scary, and so exciting too. I guess I could try, Apogee mumbled, blushing. Give me one here. Diz just stared at her friend, open-mouthed, not believing that she would do something so ridiculous. Not wanting to wait any longer, Apogee just grabbed the banana despite her. Here goes! The 14-year-old school filly lay back, bringing the phallic piece of fruit to her open mouth. And Jet felt his cock begin to slide into Apogee's throat. He could never have imagined that it'd be able to fit inside of her before. In fact, every time she'd tried thus far, his impressive girth had been prevented from even getting close to making it inside of her small mouth without scraping painfully against her teeth, let alone fitting deeper into her throat. It was only because of this new position on her back, as well as the fact that he wasn't yet fully erect, that he could even try this. Barkhan, Jet groaned, playing with Apogee's mane as his flare disappeared behind his daughter's lips and slid deeper into her daughter's throat. He could hear Apogee's choking swallows as she began to messily drool from her mouth, her tongue wetly caressing the underside of his cock, all as a huge bulge appeared along her slender throat. It wasn't as tight as her ass, or as hot as her clenching fillyhood, but for some reason knowing that he was face-fucking his only daughter, that he was shoving his thick penis into her usually bright, cheerful, smiling face, that was brutally taking her in such an animalistic way, it was just incredibly hot. Apogee's eyes suddenly went wide with alarm as she felt her father's half-erect cock begin to stiffen and fatten inside of her, his returning thickness closing her throat off and making her start to cough and choke. Buck, sorry, hun. Jed quickly tried to withdraw his stallion hood, the throbbing width of his erection almost becoming trapped in his daughter's slender esophagus as he raced against his quickly fattening cock to withdraw from her before he became stuck. Apogee moaned with fear as she felt her jaw stretching painfully wide as her father grew and expanded in her just as it seemed she would be choked by his stud flesh. Just as he began to panic, she felt her father's flare pop out of her throat, getting her to desperately needed breath of heavy cock-scented air, but he was still trapped inside of her mouth. Apogee moaned inaudibly, and the still growing flare continued to wrench her mouth open until her teeth were digging ever so slightly into Jet's tender flesh. It was only with a painful and well-timed slip that he was able to extract himself from his daughter's little muzzle, and not without some painful scratches from him on her sore jaw of her. Apogee worked her jaw back and forth tenderly, trying to get some blood flow back into the muscles. She shook her head. She looked over at her father, who was massaging his poor, abused, delicate flare. Guess they are bigger than bananas. Apogee chuckled, much to Jet's confusion. 3:15 a.m. Living room. Current score, Apogee 25, Jet 22. Buck me. The sound of wet sex filled the apartment, a cacophony of squelching, dripping, slapping, moaning. It was pure, concentrated lust. Fuck yes, more. And the sound of a picture being dislodged from a wall and falling to the floor added to the erotic cacophony as two sweaty, thrusting bodies bumped back and forth in the room, oblivious to their surroundings, totally engrossed in each other and their throbbing, panting exertion. Jed wallowed around awkwardly, on two hooves, wings outstretched for balance. His teenage daughter was currently being carried belly to belly against him, her rear legs locked around his waist and forelegs wrapped around his neck as she tried desperately to clutch her father before continuing to bounce on his stallion hood. Fuck, Daddy. Yes. Apogee squeaked out, ducking her head underneath her father's chin and pressing her nose into his chest. Apogee shivered and spasmed, muscles tensing and firing in bizarre frequencies as she began to orgasm around his hot penis again, struggling not to pass out from the sheer pleasure she took in deep lungfuls of air, each inhaled breath drawn from the nostrils currently pressed into Jet's chest fur filled with his sweat, potent musk. She groaned, tightening her muscles of her leg lock, allowing her pussy to clench and spasm as much as her father's cock could accept. Damn, hon, it's so good. Jed moaned, the tight, twisting love tunnel seeming to be perfectly shaped for his cock, gripping and quivering around him. He stumbled forward, slamming his daughter's back against the wall and driving the wind momentarily from her with the force of the impact before he started thrusting with erotic brutality into her orgasmic fillyhood. Dad, Apogee moaned as her father threaded her with the wall again and again. They started slinking lazily towards one side, partially off balance, as their backs slid against the drywall, leaving a streak of greasy sweat as an artifact of their passion. Apogee. Jet gripped hard with his hooves, feeling them sink into her tender flesh of his daughter's ass, her weight still supported by his arching arms. It was getting harder and harder to come for his little girl, more often than not over the past hour. He would just feel his flare thicken with a burning and painful heat, a throbbing build-up with no final relief, though every part of his daughter's teenage body was begging him to release more of his spunk. Dad, come on, give it to me. Jet groaned, felt his balls begin to spasm and twitch, felt his stallion hood jerking and twitching inside his sopping, dripping love tunnel. He wanted nothing more than to burst his juices into, but nothing came. His mind exploded. Stars. He was slammed by the brutally strong rush of dopamine that flooded through his system. It was only because of the intense adrenaline still surging through his system that he didn't drop his little girl, as all his muscles went spongy and relaxed. But he still couldn't feel the sweet release of ejaculation, only aching throbs. A dry orgasm. Ugh. Jet groaned, stumbling again to the left and twisting. One of Apogee's outstretched wings batted to the back of the large plasma TV, but she didn't notice. Her entire being was focused on the complex and twisting velvety insides of her vagina, where her father's sickening flare currently throbbed inside of her, jerking and clenching, without spurting and filling her with the warmth she so desperately desired. Buck. Jet moaned into his daughter's mane, gritting his teeth. The large TV Apogee had brushed tilted ever so slightly, tipping past the inevitable point before crashing to the ground with a twinkle of sparks and clattering glass. An Apogee instinctively flapped her wings with a powerful thrust, lifting her part way from her father and starting to separate their joined bodies. But Jet instinctively reacted as well, every stallion instinct inside him telling him he needed to remain buried inside of his broodmare, needed to ensure that he got as deep as possible, regardless of whether his orgasm was dry or not. Jet flapped his wings just as hard, and both Pegasi lifted off, their surprise escaping, causing them to fly suddenly over the condo's second-story landing, where they landed in a tangle of limbs and wings. Apogee ended up pinned under her father, still finishing the final panning thrusts of their orgasm, each seeming desperate to pound his little girl's hips into the floor beneath her. His humping slowed, and Jet felt the agonizing relief of the smallest trickles of watery cum release from his aching testicles, before collapsing all of his weight onto his little filly and letting out an exhausted sigh. And a moment passed, and then Apogee began to hump back against him again. 4 a.m. Living room. Current score Apogee 28, Jet 22. Apogee squealed, looking out over the bright lights of the city below, twinkling happily like little exploding stars. The cool wind of the early morning air flowed through her mane, making it dance in little waves, the dryness of the desert air evaporating much to the dampness that had built up throughout the night in the sweaty fur. Her hooves were planted firmly on the railing of the glass balcony. The penthouse suite had a beautiful, unobstructed view of Las Pegasus. But Apogee wasn't focused on the view. It's so good, Dad. She chuckled, her statement interrupted by the soft thrusting of the stallion currently mounted, traditional pony style on top of her. She sighed as she felt her father slip a little deeper into her vaginal depths in response, before wiggling her hips to let him know his reply was well received. Jet had gotten slightly less hard, slightly less engorged, had been acting ever so slightly less like a wild young colt for the past half hour, and Apogee was loving the slower pace. Where before they had been reckless wrecking ball of abandon, just smashing into her with a barrage of thick, overwhelming maleness, he was now slightly slower, methodical, attentive. Apogee shuddered as she felt her body quiver around her father once again, her little tail hole clenching and releasing multiple times as her tail lashed back and forth. Her fillyhood was getting closer to coming around her father once again. She groaned out in sadness. Once again it seemed like she was going to peak without any return from her father. Her body was aching for more of his batter to fill her. It was bizarre, but without the feel of the hot sticky cum filling her, she felt like her own orgasms were hollow. Her body needed this creamy essence to truly finish. I wonder if any pony can see you, can watch you getting pounded by your dad out in the open. Jet whispered into his filly's ears before nuzzling the back of his neck lovingly. Dad? Apogee squeaked as she slipped the medial ring into the stallion hood into her filly lips. She looked nervously out to the city around them. Most of the other lights in the nearby apartment buildings were out, but there were the odd-lit windows here and there, and out in the sky you could see some Pegasi flying about, if any of them were to look this way. Apogee squeaked with fear, clenching up slightly and pulling her wings in as she simultaneously tucked her elbows into her sides, trying to make herself as small of a little ball of puff as possible. If they look over here, they would see you getting fucked from behind. By my dad, right out in the open. Apogee thought, suddenly mortified. So, I guess my little filly isn't an exhibitionist. Jet laughed, having finally found something that made his daughter getting flustered. He had just had to tease her about this a little more. Could you imagine if some pony looks over here to see your dad? Jet thrust a little deeper, making a squelching sound as he sank into Apogee's pussy from behind, making you come all over his dick. Apogee stammered and blushed as she felt herself begin to convulse and squirm on her father's large invading penis. The embarrassment was just too much for her. "Dad, so embarrassing," she moaned out into the night sky as her orgasm overtook her. Her love bud began to wink in and out, coaxing and rubbing her father's steinhood and sending her cum splattering over the father's slowly swinging testicles. "Whoa, hon." Jet reached down to grab his daughter's hips. She had just removed her hooves from the balcony railing to cover her face, leaving her upper body totally unsupported and requiring Jet to catch her. Good girl," he chuckled, feeling his daughter spasming and coming on him once again. "Let's get you back inside then until you're done." He turned back toward the open balcony door, his daughter still suspended in the air as she came on him. As he huffed awkwardly back inside, he felt Apogee unclench around him, the loosening of her spasming muscles accompanied by the telltale sound of dripping filly juice, which he now knew to associate with the relaxed, pleasure-filled phase of her orgasm. The filly in his grasp moaned from below, tone returning slowly to her muscles as she lazily looked over her shoulder at her father with a drunkenly goofy grin. A wicked thought crossed her mind, and Jet couldn't help himself. He quickly steeled his abdominal muscles and flexed as hard as he could before turning back and stepping out the open balcony door, as if to give a debauched show to the city. And then he took his hooves off Apogee's hips, feeling his immediately tighten around him to prevent himself from sliding off. "Look, Las Pegasus, no hooves!" Apogee squeaked again, clenching up into a small ball of embarrassment, which followed her just to be stable enough for the briefest moments to be balanced, fully supported only by her father's penis. "Dad!" Apogee groaned in complete embarrassment. 4:10 a.m., second floor landing. Current score, Apogee 29, Jet 22. Aw, come on, hun. It was really funny. Jet laughed. "No, it wasn't," huffed an annoyed Apogee, her arms crossed as she sat on her haunches out in the landing, where she had run out to embarrassment. After her father's little exhibition, her cute little butt was planted grumpily on the wood floor, a small puddle of her juices having pooled under her. Jet laughed, looking back on his elbows against the interior railing of the staircase which looked out over the living room and kitchen area below. An impish grin was still plastered over his face. There was nothing he loved more than to tease his little filly, and he knew that he had scored a direct hit with this prank. "Even worse, you didn't even come in me. Again," Apogee whined before stamping a hoof. "But you did." Jet waggled his eyebrows, leaning over slightly while looking at his daughter lasciviously. Then she tensed and untensed his muscles, making his heavy erection bob up and down to slap against his belly. "I think it's fair to say I won our little competition." Apogee huffed with annoyance. Somewhere along the way, she'd lost her domination over her father, and he'd taken back his cocky swagger and control. "Dad, jeez, it's not funny." Jet sighed, leaning back and stroking his rigid steinhood slightly in front of Apogee, his cockiness and playfulness having re-emerged slightly since his prank. "So what can I do to make it up to you then?" Apogee brought a hoof to her chin as she considered how best to extract revenge, and then she chuckled. "Turn around." And Jet stood up and nodded over to Delta. "Can you watch Apogee for a second? I gotta take a leak." Delta just grunted, engrossed in the TV, as Jet stretched and trotted over into the bathroom. That cider really goes right through me," he thought as he lifted the toilet seat and stood up on his rear legs. He reached down with a hoof and massaged his sheath slightly, allowing his little guy to flop out and begin to splash a noisy stream into the toilet. "Are you going pee-pee, Daddy?" Jet almost jumped at the tiny little voice coming from next to him, but managed to keep the stream of urine headed into the bowl. "Apogee!" he half yelled in surprise, looking down to see his 3-year-old daughter curiously inspecting him. He tried his best to shield himself from her. She was still at an age where nudity didn't matter, but there was something instinctively embarrassing about urinating in front of his cute little daughter. She pointed at his penis. "How you doing that pee-pee, Daddy? Don't you need to sit down?" Jet sighed. Little Apogee had just recently gotten fully toilet trained and was extremely proud of her newfound skills. Of course, she would find this interesting, although Delta was supposed to be watching her right now. No, Apogee. Colts and stallions can go, pee-pee from standing, he explained, embarrassed at the interest and scrutiny from his little daughter.
Wow, can I do that too? Can I grab my stool and stand tall enough?
She pointed at the little step stool nearby that she would normally use to be able to reach the rim and sit down. No, hun. Only colts and stallions with wee-wees can aim well enough to do it while standing. Jet murmured, embarrassed. He looked over at the doorframe where a bemused Delta had wandered over to watch their daughter tease him.
Look, Mom, Dad's aiming his pee-pee.
I see that, kiddo. Almost unbelievable even, since he still manages to leave a mess on the seat half the time. Jet frowned at Delta. This wasn't the time for jokes.
Can I aim it for you, Daddy?
Apogee asked, bouncing forward with energy, and reached her hooves out. I'll do it. No! Jet put a hoof on her forehead, keeping her from advancing despite her whining in frustration to try and get him anyway. He could hear Delta laughing her ass off in the doorway. A little help, please, Delta? Delta cleared the tears from her eyes. Come on, kiddo. You take after your mom, trying to get your hooves on it right away. But you'll have plenty of time to learn about it when you're a bit older. She wrapped her wing around Apogee, escorting her from the bathroom and leaving Jet in peace.
Learn what when I'm older, Mommy?
Jet smirked as he heard Delta groan. Served her right. Apogee walked up behind her nervous father, who had tucked his tail between his legs. It was obvious that he was expecting his little girl would be doing something to retaliate, and he'd be damned if he exposed his tail hole to her right off the bat. The tricky little Apogee had no plans for his butt at the moment, though. Standing up behind him, she wrapped her legs around her father's hips, which allowed her hooves to come around on either side to grip his bouncing cock. Apogee?
I've always wondered what it must be like to have one of these to stroke.
Apogee buried her head against her father's back as she felt the stiff, thick heat between her hooves, and she felt herself slowly stroke her hooves up and down her father's length. The contours, veins, and slickness were becoming extremely familiar to her now. She'd almost memorized how the medial ring felt, how it throbbed slowly with his heartbeat, and her hooves weren't the only body part that she used to imprint these details in her mind.
So, I'll be borrowing yours to try it out for a little spin, okay, Dad?
Jet groaned, feeling his daughter's little filly hooves clumsily working up and down his shaft, forcing more and more blood along his stiff rod and up to his flare. He felt his kicking his legs wider, much like he'd done many times from this evening, allowing her to flick her tail along the inner thigh and tickle his swollen testes.
How's that feel, Jet?
Apogee asked, using her father's first name, trying to regain some of the power in their lusty romp. Jet moaned. Feels good. He grabbed her hoof and worked it further along the shaft to a sensitive flare of his cock. Go all the way.
Call me Apogee,
Jet. Apogee whispered, planting a kiss on his back and feeling her confidence building as she began to find her assertiveness. Apogee? Jet moaned as he felt his daughter's hooves come off of his shaft, reaching down between his legs to softly grope at his balls. I'm going to... Apogee chuckled, starting to pump a little faster and harder.
Do it, Jet. I want you to come for me.
Jet's hooves reached down, and he gripped at his shaft only to be slapped away by Apogee.
Keep your hooves off my dick, Dad. This is mine to play with.
Jet clenched the railing tightly. His aching balls had been recovering, building up for the past 45 minutes, and while he'd been running a bit dry before, the short time off had definitely left him backed up once again, and he was about ready to burst. Apogee. And Apogee felt the stallion in her hoof begin to buck and throb, accompanied by a massive grunt from her father as she kept pumping. The first heavy splatter of cum blasted from his flare, splattering against the railing with a heavy splatter. Fuck. Apogee quickly adjusted her aim as her father twisted and groaned in her hooves. Literally, she directed another blast up into the air so it arced over the edge to splatter down below the first floor of the apartment, leaving a creamy rope across the dark wooden floor near the kitchen. This is fun. Apogee laughed naughtily, directing the fire hose of cum erupting from her hooves with sticky blast after sticky blast. Let it all out, Dad. A thick rope shot through the air, landing a splatter across the kitchen island below. Another hit some odd photographs and a little decoration on the coffee table, knocking them over with the powerful force of her father's ejaculation. Ugh.
Keep going, Dad. Shoot it all.
Another blast, splattering against the wall, dripping down the messy globule streaks.
All of it. That's it.
Another blast, this one aimed at her father's chest, splattering against it messily and falling back on the floor.
Good, good.
She turned around and shot it arcing up into the air, where it hit the light fixture and fell dripping to the first floor below.
Yes, yes, good boy.
A last squirt dribbled out of the flare, trickling over her hoof, and Jet slunk to the floor panting. Apogee just lifted her sticky hoof to her mouth, licking up the batter that had accumulated there.
Wow, Dad, you made quite a mess.
4:45 a.m. Master bedroom. Current score Apogee 31, Jet 24. The sweating and panting little filly clenched her father's neck. Her eyes were drooping with tiredness as she was carried princess style in her father's arms.
Thanks, Daddy.
Apogee mewed, snuggling her nuzzle into her father's comfy, protective chest as he laid her gently onto his bed. Easy there, hon. You okay? Jet asked, genuinely concerned. For the past hour, he had felt his own overpowering lust abate. The lingering effects of the powerful medication in the Zesper concoction had tapered off and restored him to his normal faculties. And he was becoming worried about how his daughter was handling her own cool down. From her exposure to the potent combination of estrus and medication that had fueled their two-pony bacchanalian orgy of sex. How you feeling now?
Tired mostly.
Little Pegasus filly rubbed her rump while chuckling.
My butt's a bit sore. Thanks for that, by the way, Dad.
Jet blushed as images and memories of how he had fucked his little girl's plot throughout the night rushed through his head. Not that, hon. I mean, how's your heat feeling? Is your need dying down? A bit? Apogee sighed, wriggling comfortably in the bed sheets and pillows as her father sat next to her.
It's gone. That burning warmth isn't throbbing so bad like it was before. I think it's past.
Apogee rubbed her tummy, remembering earlier times that night where her belly had been filled so satisfactory with her father's batter. Jet let out a breath of tension he'd been holding back, reaching out to stroke his daughter's side tenderly with love. Thanks, Celestia. Hun, I just wanted to say. Jet paused, collecting his thoughts. I'm so sorry for everything from Friday to now. No father should ever have done something like this to his beautiful little girl. Apogee just rolled her eyes and sat up, quickly slugging her father on the shoulder.
This again? I told you before, I wanted this, Dad. I mean, sure, I didn't plan for things to go down like, well, all of this.
Apogee waved at her mess around in the master bathroom.
But don't think for a second that I am anything but the happiest daughter in Equestria right now.
Jet smiled softly, his breaking heart being slightly mended by the pure love being beamed at him from his little filly's face.
Love you, Dad. Thank you for all of this, for being there for me.
I love you too, hon. Jet sniffled slightly, his heart melting. Apogee rolled away from him, putting her back against one of the pillows propped against the headboard.
Dad, will you...
She blushed, spreading her legs slightly while keeping her tail between them.
Will you make love to me? No heat, no medication, just you and me?
And as she finished her question, Apogee squeaked with embarrassment and pulled the pillow to her lower half of her face. Jet nodded softly, crawling slowly until he was hovering over his daughter on all fours before he leaned in and planted a soft kiss on her forehead, another kiss on her nose, before he pushed the pillow down and laid a peck on her lips. Of course, Apogee. Of course I will. I love you so much. Jet started to work his way down Apogee's body, laying light little kisses on her neck, her breastbone, her belly, her teats, her lower belly, before he paused to look at his little filly. Move your tail, honey. Still clutching the pillow, Apogee moved and let her tail relax, the wispy blue hairs falling to the bed, revealing her fillyhood to her father.
Be gentle, please.
Jet nodded and smiled reassuringly at his little girl, and then he looked down at the little filly's delicate sex. It wouldn't be the first time he would be eating his daughter out this evening, but it felt different now.
Where her sex had been swollen and gorged, winking and drooling before, it was now slender and quivering, damp in a single word. Cute. Instead of thrusting herself into his tongue like earlier, Apogee was shyly clutching her pillow. Jet slowly lapped his tongue up his daughter's slit, gently working it between her pussy's slender folds. Her juice tasted so sweet, making for a lovely oral playground for him along with the slick wetness of her cute fillyhood. After a few gentle laps on her lower lips, Jet pulled his mouth further up and attacked the little girl's sensitive love bud.
Dad, yes, right there.
Apogee squeaked, wrapping her legs part way around her father's neck as she writhed in pleasure. Jet pressed his muzzle deeper into the little girl's drooling lips, opening his mouth wide so he could caress her clitoris with one lap and then send his tongue down to snake into her twisting, wet pussy's opening. He was using all of his muscles and his jaw, his tongue, even his neck, pressing forward into Apogee's snatch, exploring her depths, flicking his tongue between the throbbing filly clit and slick folds of her clitoral hood, taking his time to enjoy it with abandon.
Yes, keep going.
Apogee groaned, her legs crossed behind her father's head as she reached down to grip her father's mane with her hooves, pressing him into her teenage depths. Jet began to work his head left and right, making small circles of teasing licks over Apogee's fillyhood, and then darting his tongue into the depths to penetrate her with the lashing pink oral muscle. He was greatly enjoying her writhing moans and mewls of his daughter, content to make his time to tease her close to her edge with a fervent attack on her clitoris, before backing off to focus on some other part of her pussy, keeping her suspended in a state of happy pleasure. It wasn't like earlier that evening, where either he or her had been so eager to sate their lust with a quick and powerful orgasm, to try and boil off their demanding need with an explosion of fluid and hormones. Now, it was all about Jet taking care of her, of expressing his love for his little girl. With patience and attention, he was content to continue working at her, pushing her forward and pulling back again and again. And as minutes passed to the sounds of soft breathing and groans, Jet knew his hard work was paying off. Each time he would back off the intense stimulation of his daughter's clit, Apogee would writhe and whine, her quivering folds just falling shy of cascading into the inevitable cascade to a full-blown orgasm, before she'd untense, release a trickle of filly cum into her father's mouth and then settle back into comfortably in the more of his oral attention. But she was nearing her limit.
Dad, please, just let me come already.
Apogee whined, rubbing her thighs against either side of her father's head as she started to writhe and contort on her father, a reaction to her latest approach to her orgasmic edge. Sensing that it was time to give his daughter what she so terribly desired, Jet wrapped his tongue around the filly's quivering love bud and began to suckle.
Yes,
Apogee squeaked as she began to crest, her legs locking up tightly around her father. Jet continued to suck the toy with his daughter's clit, as her spasms became more pronounced. Unlike her loud screaming, shaking orgasms from earlier in the night, Apogee simply writhed contentedly, letting out little gasps and soft breaths of air as she rode out wave after wave of pleasure. She mewed gutturally, the sound coming more from her chest than her mouth as she wrapped herself tighter and tighter around her father's head. As her orgasm began to abate, she continued multiple powerful quivering spasms, slowing. The little filly began to finally relax and release her father's head from her death grip, which released a floodgates holding back a gush of filly cum. Jet tried to swallow the massive outpouring of sticky sweet juice, but ended up having to pull back from the torrent of splattering cum pouring from his little girl's clenching hole and rolling down to soak the sheets under her. Good girl, that's it, let it all out. Jet softly coaxed, gently stroking his daughter's side as she began to breathe more normally, a trickle of fluid slowly starting to abate. Apogee's eyes moved, her lids only partly opening to reveal her beautiful irises as she stared up at her father with a happy smile that was half drunk with orgasmic pleasure and romantic joy. She reached a single hoof up to stroke her father's brow lovingly, her smile getting brighter as she felt him shifting up to lay over top of her, holding his body weight off of her with her forearms.
Dad,
she smiled tiredly, looking into her father's piercing eyes.
Make love to me.
Jet nodded. I love you, hon. He leaned his face down to kiss his daughter on the lips, feeling her part her mouth ever so slightly, which allowed him to press his tongue into her muzzle, not with reckless abandon, but with a spirit of gentle and curious exploration. Apogee could taste herself on her father's tongue. She reached up with her hooves to wrap her arms around her father and pull him closer to her. And then, she felt his heat below. The mass of stallion flesh lay across her belly, writhing around with her father's movement. But unlike earlier, where she would have been desperate to have her stud plunge his meat into her without delay, she was happily content to simply hug and kiss her father, her emotions being filled to the brim with the incredible closeness and the strange peace of their communion. Apogee broke their kiss, using the opportunity to nuzzle her father's neck and leave a playful little lick of love on his nose, before tilting her head and allowing him to kiss her again. The pair continued in this way, softly making out, Jet's cock trapped between them, their hooves peacefully massaging and reassuring one another. This was no lusty romp, but a satisfied and passionate session of making love. Apogee let her hips fall apart, spreading her legs wide under her father's body, signaling to him that she was ready for more. And wordlessly, without breaking their relaxed kissing, Jet reached one of his hooves down to grab his penis and shift it in an attempt to align it with his daughter's aching nethers. With her current position and his rigidity, however, he couldn't quite make the angle work. He could only manage to rub part of his lower shaft against the little filly's pussy. An Apogee instantly moaned into his mouth, pulling him a little tighter in her reaction and wiggling with pleasure. With almost a sense of sadness, Jet broke the embrace with his daughter, pushing back away from her to reposition himself so that he could enter her. Apogee gave him puppy dog eyes as their embrace ended, only for Jet to shift and awkwardly realign himself before looking and smiling gently. He pressed the knob of his penis against Apogee's drooling lips, then leaned forward once again to get close to his daughter, keeping his hips pulled back so he wouldn't prod her before she was ready, and then put his nose against hers. "You ready?"
"I love you, Dad."
Jet pushed forward, the knob of his stallion hood sliding past his teenage daughter's lips. He was nowhere near as engorged or swollen as he had been hours earlier, but the sensation of this incredibly tight filly flesh slipping over his flare was still breathtaking. Still, her arousal and his care and preparation did let Jet slide into Apogee without discomfort, and let him enjoy watching Apogee's face under him begin to melt and relax with a sensation of comfort that warmed his heart, making him smile fondly. Apogee could see her father spectating her, and she began to blush, embarrassed. She was so exposed. There was no filter or layer between her and her father. It was like their entire soul, her very being, was laid bare to him through her reactions. The feel of her father's cock spreading her so wide in such an intimate place. For some reason, it was different than all the other times this weekend. It felt so real, so personal, so right. Jet leaned down and laid another kiss on his daughter, prompting her to once again open her mouth and allow them to connect with each other as they had been doing moments before. She let her hooves find their previous spots on her father's back, as Jet's hooves found their spots on her neck and side, and they resumed their relaxed embrace. And just like that, they were once again making love. Only now they were also connected below as well. Their comfortable, laid-back embrace continued. Neither needed hump or thrust, but was simply content to meld into each other, kissing and petting, hugging and rubbing, drunk on the impossible closeness of their bodies, as their souls connected and mixed with one another. Without a sound, Apogee brought her legs up, wrapping them around the small of her father's back, pulling him even closer into her, letting him slide another inch of himself into her depths. Jet started to move his hips, only ever so slightly, not for his pleasure or for her need, but for them. And Apogee sighed the soft movement of her father within her reverberating throughout. It was strange. On the one hoof she felt so exposed, so vulnerable. The most scared and private part of her essence was being invaded by another. And yet she also felt so safe, so whole, protected, loved. She sighed into her father's mouth, somehow finding a way to relax into the bed even more so than she had been doing before. Jet broke their kiss and looked at her with a soft smile, looking passionately into her eyes as he continued his rhythmic, soft, loving thrusts. "I love you, Apogee."
"Love you too, Dad."
Jet leaned back in for a moment, a round of kissing, content to keep the slow pace of blissful lovemaking flowing. Minutes passed with nary more than a whispering nothings, soft breaths and warm embraces, but all magical things must come to an end. Apogee felt herself beginning to tense and quiver with her father's soft thrusts. her body's reaction having been returned bit by bit as their lovemaking went on. She broke their kiss, wanting to tell her beloved father that she was close again, but he held up a hoof to her lips before she could say anything. He already knew. It was like they were one body, one mind, one heart. Just let it go on. Jet smiled, still softly thrusting into her.
Dad, you too. Come with me, please.
Apogee begged, caressing the side of her father's face with her hoof. Jet nodded and began to pump a little bit harder, moving his hips with more intensity and pace, but still focused on the stream of sensations and emotions pouring from his daughter.
Please, Dad, give it to me.
Apogee clenched her eyes, finally feeling her entire body start to release an orgasm. Her fillyhood clenching and milked at the beloved cock filling her, asking to fulfill their covenant to finish what they had built for so long together with an offering. Jet could feel his little girl cooling and shivering, writhing under him in pure joy, and he knew that he had to hurry if he was going to keep his promise to her. He let himself loose, using more and more of his body to thrust into her, in addition sensation and his efforts of a milking orgasm drawing that feeling of burning release from deep in his loins. Apogee. Jet clenched his eyes and his teeth as he felt his flare fatten, widening itself into Apogee's cervix so perfectly as the two experienced a moment frozen in time of heaven. Apogee leaned up to kiss her father, and she felt that sacred part of her deep inside begin to be filled with warmth, with joy. Their bodies needed no input from their conscious minds now, and she graspingly demanded his everything, and he explosively gave it to her. Jet felt the depths of his love, his biological and emotional essence flowing through him in a gushing explosion after explosion, sticky strand after sticky strand flowing and filling his beloved, her eyes fluttering as she took beautiful and loving release after release into her womb. And Jet finally stopped thrusting, collapsing down onto his little girl, trying to be as close to her as possible. As his body pressed hers into the soft sheets of the mattress, his penis still releasing its last spurts of essence deep into her, before finally subsiding. Their bodies were both on fire, their sensations and exertions having drained every iota of energy from their systems, but they somehow still managed to caress one another, lazily gazing into each other's eyes as if the rest of the universe didn't matter. And for them, at that moment, it really didn't. Minutes passed as they lay connected, body, mind, and soul. An eternity passed in an instant. Some unspoken understanding between them was acknowledged. Any longer of this might ruin it. It was time to return to Equestria, to put the landing gear back on the ground and to land. Chuckling with embarrassment, Jet rolled off his daughter, carefully pulling his soft penis out from her. Their disconnection a strange and disappointing end to such a profound experience. Thanks, Dad, for everything. Hun, I love you. You should know that I love you. Loved you and will always love you. Apogee nodded with a smile. I know. Jet sighed and rolled onto his back, the rush of reality and responsibility hitting like a ton of bricks as he considered how to broach the next subject. What a day, huh? It's crazy to think that with your heat all done and the medicine out of our systems, we'll be back to normal tomorrow. Jet saw Apogee twitch ever so slightly and then try to act like she was exactly what she had expected to hear. It was hard to say, knowing that he was breaking the heart of his little filly. Hey, that he was breaking his own heart. But it was the right thing to do. Wasn't it? Apogee composed herself and looked over at her father. She was too tired to argue now, and she was absolutely drained. She had no choice but to accept what he'd said. I guess that was our agreement, Dad. Can I at least sleep with you tonight, Dad? Just sleep, I mean, like snoring in dreams. Apogee awkwardly explained with a blush as she realized what she just asked. Jet looked at her with an arched eyebrow. Is your heat really finished, Apogee? You promised that. Yes. Apogee yawned, her consciousness quickly fading as she leaned into her father's side. I just want to snuggle with my dad. She worked herself into the crook of her father's arm, confidently falling into sleep of the loved. Jet shook his head softly at his daughter, already fast asleep. You always get your way, don't you?
I love you, Apogee.
Love you too.
The sleeping Apogee yawned before grabbing her father's side to snuggle in closer. Jet was sleeping peacefully, deeply. It had been such a draining couple of days, a true whirlwind of activity that had started the moment that he had opened his apartment door Friday afternoon. He'd never felt so exhausted in his entire life. The incredible sleep he'd just had, with his precious, beloved little girl snuggled in his arms, was divine. Literally, Jet was sure that he'd need to send a donation to the Church of Luna, or at least one of his favorite charities. She tended to favor orphanages, as a thank you for the pure restorative sleep that he had just been blessed with. He barely even noticed when Apogee escaped his grasp, having woken up before he did. He'd always been a deep sleeper. And in his dreams, Jet was on his back again in the forest, just like he had been in his dreams of his previous night, and once again a cute little mole appeared between his legs, her yellow, blue, and green fur strikingly similar to the little filly that had snuggled against his side just a few minutes earlier. And once again, her snuffling nose worked its way between his legs, slowly tracing up his thighs with small tickles until it reached his stallionhood. But this time, little Jet wasn't interested in leaving its comfy sheath, no matter what the little mole's snuffing attention attempted. His stallionhood was not interested in making an appearance. The grumpy, disappointed mole seemed to vanish into thin air, her corporeal body fading into a wispy shimmer. Dream Jet sighed with disappointment, somewhat sad to have lost the attention of the little mole, and in its place a pair of yellowish buckballs appeared on his upper thigh, their fuzzy warmth and tight muscles contrasting with the fur of softness as they started to grind up his legs until they landed right on his lap. Jet moaned as a pair of balls began to smush themselves between his pelvic bone, effectively trapping his sheath between the two beautiful globes in his belly. His penis nestled right at the crevice between the two exquisite balls, an even hotter, wetter zone that was now situated right on top of his fattening sheath. Jet groaned, straightening up slightly as he felt another pulse of blood rush through his penis, his head flopping out, coaxed to grow by the grinding and heat of the globes against his body, the heavy weight pressing deeper and deeper against his shaft, extending up his belly, and quickly reached full erection. Yeah, Jet groaned, looking down at the grinding globes, trapping his erect cock between them, making his stallionhood stand straight up.
Hey, I think you should wake up now, gentle colt.
Jet snapped his head to the left, his eyes widening in shock to see a grinning Princess Luna chuckling.
I do believe your filly friend will be getting impatient.
Luna reached out and touched Jet between the eyes, causing his entire world to twist and spin before fading to nothing. Jet blinked his eyes open and was treated to something he hadn't expected. Despite all the assurances to the contrary, despite all of their satiation of the previous 48 hours, Apogee was riding him. And to be fair, Apogee was merely hot-dogging Jet's dark brown thickness, trapping its girth between her perky, tight-ass cheeks, her blue-green tail flicking back and forth with joy even as she wet the underside of his shaft.
Oh fuck. Good morning, Dad.
Apogee squeaked, looking guiltily over her shoulder at her father. And there was a brief pause of stunned silence, where neither pony was moving, before Apogee gave one more grind against her father's erection, which quickly kicked Jet into action. Apogee? Jet sat up, throwing his daughter off him as he pulled the blanket to cover himself. What are you doing? Apogee looked heartbroken, even a little scared. She knew she'd broken the agreement they'd made.
I don't know.
Jet realized immediately just how stunned and confused Apogee must feel in this moment. That he was feeling. He had to be delicate here, more delicate than he'd ever been at work, building a turbine engine or preparing a sophisticated piece of avionics circuitry. He was dealing with the fragility of his little girl's heart here. I thought you were fully satisfied yesterday. I thought your heat was fully past. Apogee looked down at her hooves, tears starting to form in her eyes as she nodded. And Jet quickly slid across the bed, wrapping his girl in a hug tightly. Don't cry, don't cry. Apogee sniffled in Jet's arms, the tears running a bit more freely now, so Jet rubbed the girl's back. It's okay, it's okay. After what we did, I'm sure you feel confused. It's not your fault, it's my—
No.
Apogee interrupted him, taking a deep breath and looking up in his face.
No, Dad, I'm not confused.
She turned to face him, wiping the tears from her eyes and fixing her father with a clear stare.
I need you to know that I've thought about this a lot.
Jet sighed, already expecting what was going to come next and knowing that he had to cut her off before she went on. Thought about it a lot over the past 3 days, hun. Apogee frowned and grabbed her father's hoof, and for a moment Jet saw the same passionate anger that Delta could erupt into, flickering through Apogee's eyes.
No, Dad. I'm trying to think about it over the last 4 years.
Jet tilted his head, but didn't say anything.
Dad, I've had a crush on you for a long time. It started as a little filly crush that all girls get on their dads. But it didn't stop there. Dad, you've always been there for me. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and since yesterday, physically.
She rubbed her hoof slightly before looking up at her dad with a hopeful smile.
I know that it is frowned on in modern times. I know that it's taboo, but Dad, I love you. I really, really love you.
Jet swallowed heavily. He could feel the truth and passion in her statement, but he couldn't do this to her. Could he?
And Dad, I think you love me too. Not just like a daughter.
Apogee, I can't. Jet hissed, almost trying to convince himself, and Apogee scoffed.
Dad, we already have. Why can't we just love each other in our own special way?
Jet sighed, rubbing Apogee's hoof back. Hon, I can't even begin. You deserve a colt your age. You deserve to have all sorts of relationships and fools of your own. You deserve to have a normal dad who can be there for you without all sorts of craziness and conflicting romantic elements.
Apogee sighed. Dad, I'm not asking you to marry me or something. I want to be able to express my love for you. You know? Physically.
Jet swallowed again. Was he actually being swept up in her argument? She was somewhat right, though. Who were other ponies to tell him who and how he and Apogee should love? If they had something special, it was none of their business.
So, do you love me, Dad?
Apogee asked, looking up at him seriously. She knew that now was not the time to be a trademark puppy dog eyes. Apogee, I do, but still, we can't.
Why not? I don't understand.
It'll be bad for you, hon. You won't be able to have a normal dad. You won't be able to grow up normally. Apogee chuckled, already knowing that her father was lying to himself.
Dad, I won't be able to grow up without you, without us. You can still be my beloved dad the rest of the time.
Jet sighed, resigned, then brightened as a piece of inspiration struck him. How about this? We'll have a special day. Once a month, twice a week. What? No way, kiddo. That's... Okay, how about every third Saturday? Apogee shook her head, trying to put on a tough face. Nope, twice a week, take it or leave it. Maybe I should get my attorney here to help me out, Miss Art of the Deal. Jet joked, having a difficult time believing his little girl was currently raking him over the coals like this. Apogee frown instantly became much sterner. That mare from last night? I don't trust her. Apogee harumphed, crossing her arms over her chest. My offer just went up to 3 times a week, just because you brought her up. Easy there, kiddo. You have nothing to worry about from Diamond, trust me. If anything ever happened to me and your mom, I would want you to be able to rely on her. She's a good employee, nothing more. Tell you what, final offer. Once a week we can have a date night, but... Chet fixed his little girl with a dad-like stare. If it isn't date night, there's no whining, no flirting, no anything. Or else the whole deal is off. Understand?
What about during my heats?
Jet sighed, rubbing his temple. Okay, during any of your heats is okay as well, but don't try to trick me. I'll be able to tell. Apogee glomped her father in a huge hug.
Yes, I love you, Dad. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you.
Jet smirked as he was shaken back and forth by the energetic little filly, answering tiredly. Yes, yes, I love you too. So what day do you want to start next week? What night works best for you? Apogee put a hoof to her chin, trying to work out her after-school schedule of swimming, studying, and friends. How about Tuesday? Jet nodded, thinking for a moment about his schedule before realizing he would always make the time for his girl. I can make it work. Tuesday it is then. Jet planted a kiss on his daughter's brow, his heart also fluttering with excitement at this new and forbidden romance that he was about to embark on. He reached for a hooful of blanket, hoping to twist back into the bed and get some more sleep. Dad, I was kinda hoping we could... What about our agreement? I thought it started as of next week. Technically, it's still Sunday, and I know this part of you agrees. Jet swallowed nervously, hesitated, and nodded. Apogee squealed, and before Jet could even react, she pulled a bottle of Zesper that she had snuck into the room and left on the ground next to her, and right before Jet's stunned and open-mouthed shocked face, took a deep swig of the medication. Grinning naughtily as she wiped her small trickle from her mouth, Apogee handed the bottle over to her father. Here, Dad. You're gonna need these if you want to keep up with me for the rest of the day. Jet shook his head, laughing grumpily. She'd gotten the best of him again. He tipped the remainder of the bottle back and took a deep swallow. It'd be a fun Sunday, with some fun Tuesdays to come later as well. Ladies, gentlemen, it's been done. Holy shit. Oh my god. Holy fuck. The final chapter of Any Landing You Can Walk Away From at a modest 26,596 words. A new channel record. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Consider supporting me on Patreon, and have a wunderbar day.